All right. Hey, everyone. Not everyone's here yet, but we can get started. Just reviewing the agenda. That's all we've got this evening for work session and a long bathroom break. So we'll have minutes from April to approve. Then number 1, CUP 21-17 on 3308 North Cole Road is the CUP to increase the height of a wireless communication facility. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for the consent agenda. Number 2, CVA 21-11, a variance at 2420 West Woodlawn Avenue for a proposed addition. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for consent. Number 3, CUP 21-11, conditional use permit for an animal hospital clinic at 201 West Boise Avenue. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for consent. Number 4, CUP 21-15, CUP for a 35-foot tall wireless communication facility at 40 North Oahe Street. The applicants requested deferral to June 7th, so we need a separate motion for deferral. Number 5, PUD 21-10 and SUB 21-18. This is at Shoshone and Overland. We do have some opposition, and we do have 2 signups. We might receive a few more, so we will be hearing that one this evening. Number 6, CAR 21-11, a rezone at 1833 South Canal Street from R1A to R1B DA. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for consent. Number 7, CAR 21-12, a rezone at 2801 West Palouse Street. This is a rezone of 2.23 acres from R1C to LOD DA. We are recommending approval. We do have some opposition in your packet, so we will be hearing that one this evening. And number 8, CVA 21-6. It's a variance to encroach the front setback to rebuild a porch at 1412 North 8th Street. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for consent. And then number 9, CAR 21-8, modification to a development agreement for Starview Drive in Boulder Heights has been withdrawn. There's no motion tonight, but Madam Chair, if you could just note that at the beginning of the hearing this evening, since it was noticed. So in summary, we will be hearing items 5 and 7. And item 4, deferral to June 7th, and item 9 is withdrawn. And that's it. Any questions? Welcome back, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
You missed a good one last week. Since we do have a little bit of time, just if anyone's got vacations planned or I don't know, wants to get out since we've been cooped up this last year, just make sure to let myself or Melanie know because quorum's important during the summer. And that's all I got. So we'll see you back here at 6.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's get started, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available for you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the online sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings might have a bit of a delay as we navigate through the technology. Please be courteous and kind while we venture through this hybrid format. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Celine. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important that you give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there's no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few moments ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Then
Here.
Squires,
Here.
Blanchard,
Here.
Moore,
Here.
Gillespie,
Here.
Finfrock,
We still are having trouble hearing you, Janelle.
We can just recognize her attendance via video for now.
Okay, sounds good. Danley,
Here.
7 present, 1 absent.
Okay, thank you. Janelle, if you maybe want to try logging out and logging back in again, sometimes that fixes it if it's for no good reason. We cannot. But I'm getting good at reading lips, right?
How about this?
Yeah, we got you.
Yay! Okay, here.
Remember that part about patience as we navigate through the technology?
Turn our speakers on.
Okay, so first I wanted to note that item 9 has been withdrawn. That is CAR 21-8. Clark Wardell LLP at 3150 East Starview Drive. That one has been withdrawn, so we won't be looking at that tonight. Next, we have, let's see, we have a request to defer item number 4 to June 7th. This is CUP 21-15 Technology Associates EC Inc. Requesting deferral to June 7th, 2021. This is at 40 North Oahe Street, a conditional use permit for a 35-foot tall wireless communication facility. Is there anybody present wanting to testify who could not return to the June 7th hearing? Please raise your hand or do so virtually if you are online with us. Okay, I see no hands raised. And the chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that item 4 CUP 21-15 be deferred to the June 7th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Second.
Great. We have a second from Commissioner Moore. And if there is no further discussion, then will the clerk please call the vote?
Zed,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Danley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, so without objection, we will place the minutes from our April 5th, 2021 hearing and our April 12th, 2021 hearing on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 1. This is CUP 21-17 for Calmscapes at 3308 North Cole Road. This is a conditional use permit to increase the height of an existing wireless communication facility. Is the applicant present? Please virtually raise your hand or in person if you are here. Great. And Todd, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Madam Chair, yes, I am.
Thank you. And is there anybody present tonight that was looking to testify in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then we will place item number 1 on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 2. This is CVA 21-11 for MA Architecture Studio at 2420 West Woodlawn Avenue. This is a variance to encroach on the street side setback. Is the applicant present? Thank you. And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Great. Let the record please show that they are. And is there anybody present that was looking to testify in opposition of item number 2 tonight? I see one hand virtually raised. And Noah, are you, oh wait, the hand just went down. If anybody is present to testify in opposition of item number 2 tonight, please virtually raise your hand or in person. Okay, seeing no hands raised, then we'll place item 2 on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 3. This is CUP 21-11 for Veterinary Orthopedic and Surgical Care Center at 201 West Boise Avenue, conditional use permit for an animal hospital. Is the applicant present?
I'm here.
Hi, Mark. And are
Hi.
you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Oh, yeah.
Great. Is there anybody present that would like to testify in opposition of item number 3 tonight? Please virtually raise your hand or in person. Okay, seeing none, we will place item number 3 on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 6. This is CAR 21-11 for Verlin and Lowell Smith, 1833 South Canal Street. This is a rezone of 0.85 acres. Is the applicant present? Great, I see a hand raised online. And are you, sir, in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, we are.
Great, thank you. And is there anybody present tonight that would like to speak in opposition of this item? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then we will place item number 6 onto the consent agenda. The last item for consideration is item number 8. This is CVA 21-6 for Dawn Brown at 1412 North 8th Street. This is a variance to encroach into the front setback. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Hi there, and are you
Hi.
in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes.
Great. And is there anybody present tonight that would like to speak in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand.
I may have missed while I was sitting here, but I am here in opposition of number 7 and 5.
Yeah, thank you. We're not there yet. Okay, great. I don't see any opposition to item number 8. So we will go ahead and place item 8 on the consent agenda, and the chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
All right, bear with me. I make a motion that item number 1, CUP 21-17, item number 2, CVA 21-11, item number 3, CUP 21-17, 21-11. Item number 6, CAR 21-11. And item number 8, CVA 21-06 be approved or moved to the consent agenda and approved in agreement with the terms and conditions in the staff report, as well as the minutes from April 5th and April 12th.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great. Second from Commissioner Moore. Thank you. If there is no discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
and Frock.
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Great. Okay, so we are moving then right along to item number 5. This is PUD 21-10 for Rodney Evans and Partners LLC at 1514 South Shoshone Street. It also includes SUB 21-18 for Helen's Village Subdivision. This is a conditional use permit for planned residential development and a preliminary plat for residential subdivision. We will start with staff and let's take it away. Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Before you is a request for a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 15 new townhomes and the reconversion of an existing office space back to a single-family home. Preliminary plat application is also included, establishing 16 residential lots for each of the homes and 1 common lot. The 0.78 acre property is located at 1514 South Shoshone Street, shown here in red, at the corner of Shoshone and Overland, which is just down the road from the Vista and Overland Community Activity Center.
Mr. Holmes, we don't see a presentation. Sorry to interrupt you. Okay, it's up.
I should have noticed that. Here's the slide orientating yourself there. You can see near the intersection of Vista and Overland on the northeast corner of Shoshone and Overland Road. The subject property has a mixed-use land use designation and is zoned LOD, which conditionally allows residential densities of up to 43.5 units per acre. The surrounding properties immediately adjacent to Overland consist of a mixture of commercial, office, and retail uses. Residential neighborhoods primarily made up of detached single-family homes lie outside of this commercial quarter, both to the north and south. Multiple transit options do exist on the site, as a bus stop is located at the intersection, and Shoshone Street is a designated bikeway connecting the downtown area to the airport. The planned development is arranged as shown here, with 15 new townhomes arranged in 3 rows of 5, with the existing building remaining in its current location. At a density of roughly 20 units per acre, the proposal is well under the 43.5 units per acre conditionally allowed in the LOD zone. So I'm sure you noticed that the original plan submitted with these applications proposed demolishing this existing building and instead had 18 total townhomes. After discussions with the planning team, this plan was revised to the one you currently see before you, with the retention of the building and the adaptive reuse of what is currently office space. So this is supported by multiple goals and policies of Blueprint Boise, and the loss of this nearly 90-year-old home was a major item of concern for the neighborhood in initial correspondence received. Vehicular access is provided via shared drive out to Shoshone Street, which leads to individual 2-car garages for each new home, as well as 2 spaces included for the existing home on its individual lot. 9 guest spaces are proposed, though it's worth noting that 2 of these, shown here in orange, are in the required setbacks and will need to either be removed or reconfigured. Even with these revisions, the parking proposed meets all requirements of code. Neighboring single-family home to the north is buffered by the shared drive, landscaping, and a proposed 6-foot solid masonry wall. All other required setbacks and landscape buffers are being provided. All the homes have pedestrian access out to the streets, and a recommended condition of approval includes that the sidewalks be detached along both Overland and Shoshone, with appropriate street trees to increase pedestrian comfort and safety along these busy roadways. The roughly 1,500 square foot townhomes are 3 stories and approximately 33 feet in height, well under the 45-foot height limit of the subject LOD zone and the 35-foot height limit of the adjacent R1C. As identified in your project report, the elevations facing Overland do need some work. So a recommended condition of approval requires the revision of these elevations to, at a minimum, continue the brickwork along the base of the buildings, include additional fenestration and modulation to increase the architectural interest, and to face the door towards the roadway. As you know, this development is required to go through a design review application. And there will be a large amount of emphasis placed on pulling over as many design features from that existing house over to these new townhomes. It is also worth noting that with these conditions of approval, the design would meet the basic standards for the citywide design standards and guidelines. So the planning team did receive a fair number of comments, both for and against the proposal, which were included in the project report and your late correspondence. Concerns centered around the density of the project being compatible with the existing residential neighborhood, the lack of on-site open space, traffic impacts, and concerns that not enough parking is being provided. Letters of support cited the location of the development as being ideal for density, and we're actually of the opinion that the proposal is not providing as many units as could be supported by this location. They also mentioned the desirability of townhomes being provided to the mixture of residential options in the neighborhood. So I hope you saw in your late correspondence packets, there were a couple of minor modifications to the original recommended conditions of approval. Thought it might be worth just briefly going over those. For site-specific condition 5 there, we did receive some preliminary feedback from the applicant that there may be some conflicts with the irrigation easement that could affect the ability to detach the sidewalks or plant street trees along Overland Road. So the addition that you see here in red is really just to provide some latitude to work through this possibility. As you know, we still do have the DR approval and the final plat applications to ensure that the best possible layout is achieved. We did also just receive a draft ACHD report literally a couple hours ago. And it does sound like that intersection there at Shoshone and Overland is scheduled for some improvements to improve ADA access. And we should be getting a complete design for what those could look like kind of late this year, early next year. So obviously the applicant will have to comply with any standards that came along with that as well. And then the second change that you see here is really just me apparently not knowing my eastern and western property lines. So apologies for that. So in conclusion, and as detailed in the project report and highlighted in this presentation, the planning team finds the applicant's proposal to be consistent with the standards of approval, including the development code, blueprint Boise, and the requirements of all reviewing agencies and departments. As such, the planning team recommends approval of the applications with conditions. For PUDs, the commission is the decision-making body, and for the subdivision, it is the recommending body to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Next, we'll hear from the applicant, Mr. Semple. Please start with your name and address, and we'll start with 10 minutes.
Should be plenty. Ben Semple with Rodney Evans and Partners, 1014 South LaPointe Street, Suite 3, Boise, Idaho, 83706. First and foremost, I want to thank Kevin for his presentation. It's a great outline of the project that we're proposing this evening. As stated, the Helens Village subdivision is comprised of 15 new townhomes and a single building that will be converted back into a residence. It's originally constructed in 1935 and converted into an office building in approximately the mid-70s and has been that way since. I do want to make sure to state that we are in agreement with the conditions of approval in the staff report, as well as the updated conditions in the late correspondence memo. We have been working with ACHD regarding the sidewalk condition along Overland specifically. They've indicated they are rebuilding that sidewalk and the intersection ADA ramps, as well as moving some of the cabinets and light pole and some other stuff, because there is a traffic light at this intersection from Shoshone onto Overland. We would be amenable to the detachment of the sidewalk along Shoshone. We do have some adequate right-of-way there. Part of the ACHD staff report talked about additional dedication of right-of-way along Overland. If that becomes the case, it impacts the project a little bit, and we feel that detaching sidewalk there would break up the available green space that is shown here, especially if we can't accommodate street trees and then have a detached sidewalk that's really close to those buildings. Even with DR and some of the design review and some of the architectural modifications we'll be making to the elevations along Overland to improve that, we feel like having as wide of a continuous green space along Overland is really going to be beneficial for the project, as well as people that are going back and forth past here. I do understand that the need to detach a sidewalk to help pedestrians feel more comfortable. Ultimately, that exposes the front porches of 3 of these units to the traffic that's right along Overland as well. If we can keep it this way, we have essentially a 12-foot landscape buffer between the sidewalk and those structures that we feel would be very, very beneficial to those units. Not only because of traffic, but because of sun exposure coming off of Overland. It get really hot on that south side. So getting back into the project, the 15-unit townhomes with the one existing structure, the townhomes will be 2-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom. They include 2-car garages. These are single-family for sale units. They have the garage, and I believe maybe the next slide, Kevin, might show. Yeah, so lower level is garage, oversized front porch for entry, then the entry, and then the stairwell to the second floor. The second floor has the kitchen, dining, and living. And then the third floor is the master suite, a bedroom, and then a small office. Knowing that there's been some, dealing with COVID and a lot of people working from home, rather than trying to squeeze 3 bedrooms into these units, we felt like a more appropriate design would be for a 2-bedroom with a small office that would allow work from home. It also reduces really the number of residents. Probably not a lot of families unless it's a very small family with a young child moving into these. We anticipate this as kind of younger professionals working in the area close to downtown. As I stated, these all have 2-car garages. This unit is the same width as multiple other projects that have come through recently, and they do hold 2 cars in those garages, accessed from very similar, if not narrower drives, still meeting code, obviously. There are 9 additional on-site guest parking spots. We do see that there are a little bit of an encroachment into that northeast corner and then into the Overland Road frontage. We had additional parking spaces before we were requested to save the existing structure that required us to move some of that parking out towards Overland. Keep in mind also that currently there's a parking lot between that building and Overland. So it's actually reduction in asphalt. One thing it did do for us, it increased our guest parking spaces by reorienting the site this way. It also allowed us to have an open green space there next to the parking and in front of that existing structure. It allows visibility into that building and the architectural interest that's involved with that. Additionally, there's been some concerns about privacy. Obviously, there is an existing residence to the north of here. They have extensive landscaping on their property. I met with them this past Friday to discuss, what we could do. I'm going to be doing some studies on line of sight from the windows that are on the second floor are the only full operable windows on those north facades, and that's in the dining room space of these units. The bedroom windows on the north facade of these buildings are transom windows. So up high, you can't see out of them into their yard. So I'll be looking at their existing vegetation, the trees that we're able to save along the north property line, and how we can best mitigate any potential views into their backyard, because we do really want to be a good neighbor and protect what they've had in their backyard, which is a really great space. We've also worked with the fire department since our submittal to make sure that we are meeting all the fire code for access. We've reduced the number of gable ends and added a second roof style in the middle 2 units. And that keeps these buildings predominantly below 30 feet at the eave. And we do have an email from the Boise Fire Department approving conditionally this design. There's been some comments about trash. We did get feedback from Boise, the Solid Waste Department, that we will be paying for enhanced or carry out service on these. So there won't be trash and recycling bins out on Shoshone. They will place them outside their garages, and then each individual homeowner pays a nominal fee to have Republic Services come in and pull their cans to the street to service them. So and all the cans will be enclosed in the garages of these units as well. I did talk about working with ACHD on the sidewalks and the frontage improvements. There is some irrigation delivery. It's pretty limited, the number of people that work off of this. And I've discussed again with the neighbor to the north, who's also the rotation manager, about how we best address the continued delivery to his property, as well as to provide pressurized irrigation to this one. In the staff report, it talked about future cross access to the east. We are open to that. Don't anticipate that property redeveloping anytime soon. It's currently a working daycare or preschool potentially. And there's been no indications that they're going to move anytime soon, but we would be open to that if it does happen. Ultimately, we do feel like this project is meeting goals of the City of Boise code, as well as Blueprint Boise, specifically for the central bench planning area, when it is in relation to the Overland Road corridor that encourages a mix of small scale 1 to 3 story pedestrian oriented mixed use developments along Overland Road. That same portion of the Blueprint Boise just encourages a mix of housing type, lot sizes, and price points in the central bench in accordance with the policies contained within that CBCCN 3.2 mix of housing type to maintain the area's diverse character. One of the other policies within the central bench planning area is for compact neighborhoods. Compact neighborhoods in the central bench identified on the land use map are intended to remain functionally and stylistically diverse in the character of homes and types of homes that exist. We definitely feel like this project is providing another housing type in this area that is predominantly large lot, single family. This is also on the Overland Road transit corridor. There's a bus stop immediately at the intersection of Shoshone and Overland. We're not requesting a parking reduction, even though I do believe that it would be justified if we wanted to pursue that. Connectivity within the Blueprint Boise is obviously a big thing. Implementing the recommendations of the Central Bench Neighborhood Pedestrian and Bicycle Plan kind of has already been done for us a little bit. Shoshone has been designated a bikeway. There's a bike lane on the east side of Shoshone that leads all the way in towards downtown. One thing that kind of an unintended consequence of saving, not necessarily consequence, but one thing that came out of saving the existing structure was because we're going to reduce the amount of grading on the site due to the elevation of the home in relation to the grade, it could potentially allow us to save some more trees on the north side. Unfortunately, with the retention of that home, we had to relocate our entry drive to the northwest corner, which does eliminate a couple other larger trees. We are mitigating for the removal. We are planting 71 trees on this site, and we're saving anywhere from 3 to 5 of the trees on the site as well. Working with the neighbor again, there's a couple leaners out there, some really tall pines that probably end of life in their urban setting that need to come down anyway. We have a lot of other items within Blueprint Boise, as well as the Central Bench Neighborhood Association plan, talking about all of the goals that we really have for this project, incorporating it into this neighborhood and allowing for, some more inventory in our housing that we desperately need in Boise right now to help mitigate some of the costs that are involved. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Simple. Before we get to questions from the commission, I will just check to see, do we have anybody present tonight representing the Depot Bench or Vista neighborhoods? Are you representing the neighborhood association? Okay, great. It's your turn. Great, we'll start with 10 minutes.
Okay. My name is Dave Kangas. I reside at 1715 Canal Street, and I'm the president of Vista Neighborhood Association. At first, I was really in big opposition to this project, but realizing that it met zoning, there wasn't a lot to be said. I believe he was applying for a variance for lot size. And the biggest complaint was losing the old building. The Vista neighborhood area doesn't have much protections for these buildings. And being on an arterial like Overland, as we grow and have new projects, we want to keep them looking good. There's tens of thousands of cars that drive by them every day. So the fact that he worked with obviously input and saved the old building is a big plus. I mean, it's huge. I think the sidewalks are also an issue. ACHD will probably be fighting for detached sidewalks. I didn't quite hear all of that because I know that they've fought for detached sidewalks on some developments in our neighborhood. Isolated islands of detached sidewalks don't make a lot of sense and they don't help a lot. Here, I think they would hurt because it seems that this type of project is being prevalent. You know, I know of at least four in the area that have been built or proposed of 3-story townhomes. Mitigating that site exposure of these buildings needs a lot of work. Looking at a shoebox from the side isn't very pleasing to the eye. It doesn't matter what you do to the front of it if you can't see the front from the street. When you're driving tens of thousands of people driving down Overland and you see a square window and a big square box, that's just ugly. And if you're trying to improve the look of Vista and Overland to draw better, more commercial developments, each development has to look good. You've got to set a standard that, hey, you know, we're working with them. I appreciate what the developer's done in working with that, but it needs a lot of work on design review. And I also appreciate hearing what he said about working with the neighbor, because again, as we see more of these 3-story projects come about, they're impacting neighbors. Shoshone is a glorious street of old homes that people take pride in. I can just imagine what that neighbor feels like buying a nice classic home next to a cool classic home and then have this pop up. How's he going to enjoy his backyard looking at those things? That's a huge impact. And it needs to be mitigated somehow through design review, because obviously there's not a lot of way of stopping them completely. But if you don't mitigate them, you will be getting a lot of kickback from neighbors and residents over time. So overall, I have to say thank you for saving the old building. It needs a lot of work on design review for visibility from Overland. And I think that keeping not having detached sidewalks would help preserve the privacy and be able to mask some of that massive white box that you see from Overland. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a representative from the Depot Bench neighborhood? Okay, I don't think I'm seeing one. So now we'll move to questions from the commission for the neighborhood, for the applicant, or for staff.
Madam Chair.
Great, let's start with Commissioner Finfrock and then Commissioner Blanchard.
Thanks. This question is for the city. Can we go over the tree mitigation plan? I'm a little confused, and I know maybe it will change based on the sidewalk design, but right now, are we losing 14 trees and we're gaining 71 trees? Generally speaking, I'm just a little bit confused about that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, we are, hopefully you can see this. This is the tree mitigation plan that was submitted with the original application, but we can kind of extrapolate this into what the current proposal is doing. So we are losing a fair amount of trees along the north and the east there. And then the two trees kind of near Shoshone as well. So the ultimate number, if you're just looking at, ultimate numbers, yes, we are losing, a little over a dozen trees. And then I think the total number is kind of mid-70s coming into the property. But obviously these mature trees have a significant amount of, size to them, so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question for Ben. Ben, did you ever not consider a site plan that was clearly outdated if ever accepted in planning practice? These kind of slot developments like this are banned almost everywhere, unfortunately, not in our code. I could not support a site plan like this. I'll just come out and say it real early on. There's plenty of reasons in the code and plenty of reasons in the comprehensive plan to not support a site plan that looks like this.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, based on our ability or inability to locate a access into the site off of Overland, we were pretty restricted in how we could access the units. We're providing, more than the width that code requires for those drives to come in there. The design, unfortunately, the design on the side of the facades facing Overland has not been able to be developed as fully as we would have liked it to at this point. Knowing that we're going through design review and we'll be getting some additional comments, we intend for those ends to look like the front of a building, including that those doors would face and the walkways to the units that are on Overland would actually come out onto that sidewalk on Overland. So I understand what you're saying, but unfortunately the site is very constrained in how we could develop it, especially considering that it could have a multi-story apartment complex with 33 units in it.
I would actually prefer that, frankly. Just to be honest, if we're going to have just sides of buildings fronting Overland, I would rather see a site that was designed well rather than this right here is just such a crazy compromise. I don't see how this meets principal IDP N2 in blueprint, how it reinforces the established streetscape characteristics when every other building on Overland fronts the street. I mean, that's just normal design principle. And I know you know that, and I'm sure your client just put you up to this, but I would further say that CBCC on 1.4, which you already stated, Overland Road Corridor, is supposed to be pedestrian oriented, which means buildings fronting street. That's specifically what that means. I would
Commissioner
say,
Blanchard, is there a question in that? Sorry, just to direct us.
okay.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Blanchard, to touch on the streetscape, technically the side street setback is Overland. The property fronts on Shoshone. We are incorporating multiple doors on Shoshone as well as street trees, front porches, and we are going to reorient with the feedback from the city planning staff as well as some initial design review comments, orient those units so that the front, the side that's facing Overland will appear to be more like the front of a building, incorporating some other awnings and stuff like that on that facade. That probably doesn't answer your question, but that's a clarification at least.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Squires.
This question is for staff and kind of piggybacking on Commissioner Blanchard's comments. I have the exact same concerns as a planner professionally. Prior to the home being included on the site plan, was there any consideration of asking for a redesign due to the lack of frontage onto Overland?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Squires, going back to the early preliminary feedback, there may have been some discussion with that, but with this plan that you do see before us today, as Commissioner Blanchard stated, our code does not prohibit this type of design. And with the recommended conditions of approval, it does appear to meet all of the citywide design standards and guidelines. So there's not much in code to fall back upon to force a redesign.
Commissioner Gillespie.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'm sympathetic to Commissioner Blanchard's argument, although I am cognizant that we have, received multiple training sessions about not relying exclusively on the comprehensive plan for rendering this sort of decision. But I did want to ask, so I think we're going to have to grapple with that if we keep going down this road. But I did have a couple of questions for Kevin and for Ben. So first of all, Kevin, could you review what the amenities are for this site? I didn't pick those up in the staff report, and it's hard for me to open the staff report at the same time that I'm looking at Zoom.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I'd be happy to go over that, and apologies if they weren't readily apparent there. So since this site is less than 1 acre in size, our code just does require a minimum of 100 square feet of open space, which is being provided by those front porches. In addition, in the staff report, I do mention that there is the Whitney Elementary School and Community Center just a couple blocks to the west, which has pretty active dog park area after hours, as well as South Junior High and the associated pool just up Shoshone Street along that bikeway.
Thank you very much. I have two other questions, Madam Chairman.
Please go ahead, Commissioner Gillespie.
So, Kevin, could you, I know there were several questions in the public record about why the outlet is on Shoshone and not on Overland. Could you just review that briefly for the public and the commission?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, yes, that is a good point. There is an existing driveway as it stands right now out to Overland, but both ACHD policy and our own kind of subdivision policy, if there's an option to take access from a lesser classified road such as Shoshone Street, that is the route to take, and that is what is occurring here. And in ACHD's draft staff report, they do have a requirement that any access to Overland be prohibited.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, one last question, please.
Please go ahead, Commissioner Gillespie.
So Ben, pursuant to Chris's concern, it seems to me like just looking at this site plan, the only way you could address his concern and Commissioner Squire's concern is to look at those 10 units on the east side, the 2 rows of 5. And if we shift those sort of 90 degrees so that at least the bottom row of them faces onto Overland, I think you could get 4 across, but then you probably couldn't get 6 across in the next row above it. And you can figure out where I'm going of how basically the 2 right-hand columns could be shifted into rows, but I think they'd each only be able to be 4 long. So Ben, you could do it, but you would lose 2 units. Presumably you'd be able to make those 4 units maybe a bit bigger, and you might have to slide up into and because the parking lot wouldn't go or the drive aisle wouldn't go all the way across, you get some space on top. What's your thoughts on that, Ben?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, it basically, with keeping the existing structure on the site, if we turned these units to in the way that you're speaking, we could not gain access to the garages with another unless we completely eliminated any more units north of them. So we would end up losing 6 units. And so then we'd end up with a 10 unit development on a site that could hold 33 just by right in the code at LOD. I do appreciate what you're looking at, how you're looking at that. I just don't see how we get traffic to the garages on the units that would face Overland. These are about 40 feet or so deep. And that is essentially 2 of those units wide as you're looking at it now. So the garage entry would be almost in line with the south wall of the existing structure on the site. So the only way to get to those garages would be from the north side, thereby eliminate, I guess you could put 2 more up there if you had a central drive that came down to those. It compromises the number of units on here that were, part of the thought with this design, and specifically for townhomes versus a multifamily project, was that this creates a transitional zone from Overland into what is primarily single-family detached residential lots. So it, rather than having a large dominating structure immediately to some single-story or story and a half structures to the north, we wanted to have something that was residential and a little lower density.
Right. One more question, Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie, please.
So Kevin, is it fair to say that when the city advocated for retaining the existing single-family home, we basically, in a sense, forced this particular design?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, it certainly plays into this design just with the access point, and I think Ben spoke to some of the grading that got brought into play, enforcing where that access point is. But there certainly is the other side of the coin, yeah, where there's a bit of a trade-off in terms of the constraint that it places on the site itself.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So Kevin, doesn't the existing comprehensive plan also encourage us to retain this single family home?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, yes, there's the multiple policies and goals which point to kind of adaptive reuse, if you will, of homes like these. And even, the recently passed housing bonus ordinance has a whole section speaking to situations like this.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So Kevin, is it fair to say that sort of the comprehensive plan itself, because it has sort of contradicting and sometimes cross purposes in it, that's what's sort of leading to this design that has some conflicts built into it?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I think that's, probably an accurate kind of summary of what's led us here, yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Okay, I want to understand a couple of points. So first and foremost, condition number 5 in the staff report states, and I'm reading it, detached 5-foot sidewalks shall be installed along Overland Road and Shoshone Street with 8-foot landscape planter strips with appropriate street trees installed. I want to make sure I'm clear on what exactly we're getting at. This is one of our conditions, flat out saying thou shalt built, detached sidewalks, so to speak. Applicant is certainly hoping that's not the case though, right? Because you would prefer there to be 5-foot attached sidewalks, if my understanding is correct, because their purpose of that is so that the planter strip provides more of a buffer from the side facade, despite what changes might come through design review to Overland. Is that accurate?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, so it would be 7-foot attached that we're good
Okay.
with, the attached 7-foot. ACHD has indicated they're actually doing that work. They're in preliminary design right now. They haven't finalized it, but we are, or part of the ACHD staff report has the owner and developer contributing almost $10,000 to a road trust for the rebuild of that intersection and that attached sidewalk on Overland.
Mm-hmm.
I think our concern was there's some irrigation delivery that's along there that we're still trying to vet. We think that it can maybe possibly go away. But yes, ultimately what our feeling is that if we detach the sidewalk and have street trees, that's lawn and street trees. And then we have about 7 feet from sidewalk to building then, which really doesn't support any tree of any size. And we can't put shrubs and stuff out in the Overland planter strip. So we would rather have a larger area to provide more landscaping along the facades of the building so that it appears to be kind of a front of a home, foundation plantings, and then the front walks. That's kind of the concept.
Anything to add to that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, no, I think Ben summarized it. Obviously, is the city's default position is to detach sidewalks along arterial roadways, just to increase the pedestrian safety and comfort. And I think the street trees and vegetation would be probably relatively comparable either way you go with that.
However,
Commissioner Danley,
sorry,
just for the record.
But however, ACHD has since stated that their purpose in coordination with the existing developer is to do a 7-foot attached sidewalk from Shoshone east to presumably the intersection with Overland or with, the north-south, which is going to be Vista, right? That's correct, right? So ACHD's position is they want to move through and do a 7-foot attached sidewalk, to which the developers already, provided $10,000 for the road trust. So this is already in motion, is what I'm getting at. Is that accurate?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, to some degree, yes. Like I said, we just received the draft ACHD report a couple hours before this presentation, in which that information was given to us. I also think it's worth noting that the design of that intersection that is being redesigned right now is still ongoing. So it's kind of planning team's understanding that there could be still an opening to push for detached sidewalks through that process with ACHD. Obviously, kind of as this condition is written, it does provide latitude. So if another entity such as ACHD were to, strongly go one way or versus the other, that latitude could be given and could be worked through with either the final plat or the design review application, depending on the timing.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Mr. Holmes, a question for you. If we were to approve this, as you've mentioned a few times, and so is the applicant, this would have to go through design review. The applicant has stated that their intention is to essentially change the facade. I'm going to call it the side facade, if that's such a right term.
Yep.
That does front Overland, for the purposes of some of the things that have been discussed this evening. So my question to you is, and I know we're not marrying you to anything that design review would do, but what are the types of things that design review can require of the developer to make that side facade improved?
Sure.
Poorly worded, sorry.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, no, I follow with you. And maybe it would help to look at that condition as it's written currently. It's number 2 there. Apologies if it's a little small, but there's a couple kind of broad ideas in there to provide some direction at what the planning team kind of envisions happening. So the first one is the kind of continuation of brick, which you find on the existing building as well. So maximizing that kind of cohesive look. Whereas right now, I think the elevations just show kind of, blank siding. The next one would be additional, windows and additional modulation along that facade. I know with design review, sometimes they do kind of, faux windows along garages, things like that. But that would go a long way in our mind to creating at least more of an appearance of a front rather than a side. And then the last one, obviously, is just making sure that the door is clearly facing the street, as well as connecting out to Overland as a front of a house would be.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
question for either staff or the applicant. The chief sin of this site plan is not that, let me just ask this way. How does remedying the look of the side of the buildings eliminate the slot?
I can, Madam Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, I mean, it does not change the site plan. That condition does not change the site plan.
Thank you.
Do we have any final questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Great. So next we're going to move to public testimony. If you are online and would like to testify on this item, please virtually raise your hand. Similarly, if you're in person, please come on up to the front so we can get an idea of who to move on to next. Okay, we'll start then at the top of my list. I see Jeff Van Lith. let's start there and we'll kind of just work our way down. Jeff, please start with your name and address once you unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. Jeff, go ahead when you're ready. You can turn your video on too if you'd like to.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
So my name is, I'm sorry. My name is Jeff Van Lith. I am at 2911 West Teton Street. That's about 2 blocks to the north of Shoshone and Overland. With me, my audio is not working, but with me is my daughter Anna, who goes to Monroe Elementary. She's in 5th grade. Anna is 11 years old. Kind of want to talk about the traffic along Shoshone with this proposal. And I'm not a builder. I'm not a development guy. I'm just a dad. And I see a lot of traffic along Shoshone, and where this outlet to this development is on Shoshone Street. Those cars are not going to turn left. They won't be able to turn left to go on Overland. They're going to turn right. They're going to head north on Shoshone. They're going to go to the corner of Shoshone and Kootenai. They're going to head east on Kootenai to get to Vista, and then on from there. As the developer stated, they're probably going to be young professionals. My concern is that the outlet going into Shoshone is going to cause a lot of traffic, a lot of kids going to school, including my daughter. We have 3 other kids as well. And I'm worried about the safety of our children going to school along with all their friends is a big concern. If you remember, in 2016, there was a young boy named Maximo Wyatt. He was run over by a van, person in a minivan. He's drug about 40 feet. This is on the corner of Owyhee and Kootenai. Fortunately, Maximo survived. There's 4 passerbys that lifted the van off of him. And he, through lots of therapy, was able to kind of make it not quite 100%, but he's still with us. With the current traffic right now, the traffic situation in this neighborhood, I do not want another Maximo. I don't want my daughter to have the same thing happen to her as what happened to Maximo. And I want some sort of a change to this development. I like the way, we need some housing in the neighborhood, but we need some safety as well. So please take that into consideration when you're deciding this situation. And if I sent a letter in earlier today, and there's a link to what happened to Maximo Wyatt. So please take that into consideration. And thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, we'll move to the phone number that's called in. It's ending in 1944. So if you are on the phone on that 1944 number, please unmute when you're ready. Start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Do we have a caller on that phone number? Phone number ending in 1944. Is there a caller on the line? Okay, not hearing from anybody just yet. We'll keep that number on the line, but let's move down to Shelly Harris, which is the next hand I see raised. Shelly, please go ahead and unmute and start with your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hello. My name is Shelly Harris. I live at 1504 South Shoshone Street, Boise, Idaho 83705. Thanks, commissioners, for taking the time to hear my concerns. My husband and I have lived at this address for 20 years. Our property is directly north of the townhouses, so we will share the north fence. Our first concern is parking. The garage space is small. It will be a challenge to fit 2 cars and any storage in this space. The shared driveways allow no parking in the driveways, so this will force residents or guests to park on Shoshone Street, which already has parking concerns due to the new bike lane that went in last year. The 9 guest parking spots are above the city requirements, but
It's
we-
7 o'clock.
we all know that this is not enough parking. The complex still needs more parking. Only having one entrance to the complex adds safety concerns, especially during early mornings when children are on their way to school and the residents are on their way to work. Similar to what Jeff said, only having one entrance is a major concern. This will also add congestion to the corner of Shoshone and Overland, along with additional traffic issues on surrounding streets. Another concern is keeping the original structure on site is going to look strange. Blending the old with the new does not preserve or enhance the character of the existing neighborhood. I keep imagining what this is going to look like. In my opinion, it would be better to remove the clinker brick home, build 2 townhouses in this space, which also would allow for more parking and possibly keep one of the large trees on the front yard. If the clinker brick does remain, then the design of the townhouses needs to blend with the clinker brick home. On a personal note, the privacy of my backyard will never be the same, but I really do appreciate Ben's efforts in keeping us in thoughts with this concern. Also, as mentioned tonight in some of the comments, turning the buildings the other direction will also impact our backyard, and we are totally opposed to that. Finally, I do understand the need for housing because of the growth of Boise, but this needs to be done right. After it is built and all the units are sold, this complex will affect the daily lives of myself and my neighbors. It needs to be done right. Additional parking is needed. Safety concerns need to be addressed, as well as the design of the complex. I'm hoping all these concerns will be reviewed. This complex needs to be self-contained and preserve the character of the surrounding neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Next, we're going to hear from Jake Armstrong. Jake, please go ahead and unmute when you're ready. You can start your video if you'd like. Start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Jake Armstrong. My home address is 2101 South Philippi, Boise, Idaho, 83705. I am a commercial property owner. I own the parcels at 2913 and 2909 West Overland, so those are directly south. I've been in conversation with my tenant who runs a Pilates studio at that location. There are definitely parking concerns on the commercial side. We have parking issues already with this intersection with people coming in on Shoshone and continuing on south, thinking they can come through, and then deciding, to park there and go walk around and go to different businesses. And so we have parking issues and we have concerns. I also own 2909, which is a vacant lot. And I'm definitely worried that people are going to try to park there if someone was to move in with a trailer into one of these complexes, or a large vehicle, truck, even a moving van, that they will just decide to park there, and then I will have to, call the police and have them towed. And it's just not something that I feel is being thought through. Parking is a concern. The intersection is not safe. We know this. We have seen, some incidents with that design, and I know that ACHD has that on their radar. They have reached out, probably be working with me, they said, starting in June potentially. So I'd like to see how that might come together to further strengthen this. And then lastly, the water pressure in the area, I would like to see if Suez could address that, because we already have water pressure issues. I can only run one sprinkler at a time at this property. And so, Suez has stated they can't support the growth in the valley and the infrastructure. And so I'd like to know that we're going to have water pressure, potentially after all these homes come in. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Next, we'll hear from Heather Schambarger. Please go ahead and unmute when you're ready. Start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes, Heather.
Hi, my name is Jamie Schambarger. I'm Heather's husband. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to first say that the
Sorry,
guy.
can you please just start with your address, Jamie?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
1400 South Shoshone.
Great, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to first say that the guys that are presenting the plan seem very amenable and honestly are trying to come to a conclusion. We do, with all of the people coming to Boise, growth, it's a problem. And I think everybody's trying to work to help that. Our concern is basically been voiced by everybody else. Why keeping the original structure? I do understand that, but if in a development like this, I agree, it's going to look very strange, the old with the new. The exit and entrance off of Shoshone were right at the corner of Shoshone and Clark, and we're the first turn that would be made out of the complex to then go through a very quiet neighborhood with all kids, all little kids. It's one of the reasons we bought here in 18 and rebuilt our home. That's a big concern to us. Shoshone's already extremely busy, and this would be, in the morning, it would be a problem with all the kids walking and going to school down the street, and our kids as well. The guest parking, because of the bike lane, anybody that's coming and going, there's not that much parking now, even for the residents. So I can just see this being a complete nightmare. And the water pressure was already brought up by Jake Armstrong. So I think that's it. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you, Mr. Schamberger. Next, we'll hear from Nina Schaefer. Nina, please go ahead and unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
Hi, thank you. My name is Nina Schaefer, and I live on 117 South Dot Street. And I'm here today to voice my support for this project. As a current renter on the bench, I recognize that in today's housing market, a project like these and future townhomes are our best option as a first-time home buyer, not only for the potential price points, but the proximity townhomes have to amenities. This project is within 2 major bus lines, has access to the Shoshone bikeway that connects to downtown, and the Greenbelt is within walking distance to the nearest grocery stores and community centers. My household, like many within my age, seek a home where we could become a 1 to no car household, and this location would allow us to do that while still having adequate access to transportation in the area. I'm also in support for this project as it aligns with the goals of Blueprint Boise. The location is identified as a mixed-use zone and isn't properly utilized under its current use. It is a small-scale development along the corridor, Overland corridor, that again has low impact to the road infrastructure and is along the Shoshone bikeway that connects bikers to other parts of the town. These are my main reasons for supporting this project, and I hope to see this project approved this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. Next, we'll hear from Max Rake. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Max Reich is my name, and 1409 South Shoshone Street is my address. Thank you so much for letting us have a conversation here and chat about this. I recognize that we probably are unable to halt a project like this in our neighborhood, the growth like we've all talked about. Some concerns that I brought up, other folks have brought up. I watch out my office window here every morning and every afternoon as at least 100 kids walk by that come from the south. And so, like Jeff said in the beginning, you know, the amount of traffic coming in and off of Shoshone is going to be a lot, and adding to our already busy road with, you know, like everybody else said, the bike lane constricting that traffic. There's bound to be something happen. So parking is definitely a concern. If they removed a whole building and put parking in there enough, as well as a grass area, I'm concerned about where are they going to take their dogs to go use the bathroom? Where are their kids going to play? I know there's only 2 rooms per thing, and so young professionals have kids, and they're going to walk right next to all of our houses here. And those dogs are going to walk right next to our houses here, and so that's a concern for us as well. So, you know, the 2-car garage is a 12-foot, I think, if I remember right, looking at that. I know that we live in Idaho, and I don't know any car that could fit 2 cars in 12 feet. So That's pretty slim there. So those are mostly my concerns: is the children, the parking, and then no grassy area for those folks to be in. And so they're going to be in our yards with their grassy area. So thank you so much for your consideration and declining this current situation and having them redo it.
Thank you, Mr. Reich. Next, we'll move to Katie Stone. Katie, please go ahead and start your video if you'd like to. Start with your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you so much. I guess 2 big concerns. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't say my address.
Just please start with your name and address.
Yeah, so my name is Katie Stone. I live at 1409 South Wilcom. We are right around the corner from the proposed project. So my 2 big concerns today are the look of the proposed homes. This is a really special neighborhood with a lot of really amazing architecture, and to have these really modern kind of boxy townhomes would really, I think, detract from the architecture around that's already in the current neighborhood. And I do appreciate the efforts to kind of make it blend into the existing house, but I think a lot of work needs to be done to make the project just more attractive in general. My biggest concern, however, is one that has been repeatedly brought up today, and that's the traffic. So when people turn onto Shoshone, the first street that they meet is Clark. So what they will do is they will turn up Clark, turn up Wilcom to then get onto Overland. And that directly impacts myself with a very small toddler. I did a quick count in my head, and just on Clark and Wilcom, there are 20 children that are elementary school aged or younger. My son is 2 years old, and he is by far not the only 2-year-old in the neighborhood. There's quite a few. So people are going to be driving up and down, rushing to get to work, not looking for small children. Then when he's older and goes to walk to Monroe Elementary School, when he goes to walk to South Junior High, he's going to have this impact with all this additional traffic in an area that's already a huge problem. Every day when I walk by Shoshone, I see people barely pause at the corner of Shoshone and Kootenai to get, to beat people through these 4-way stops, to beat people through the corner of Shoshone and Cascia. So with a large development, and again, I appreciate the efforts to make it smaller, but with any development like this, there's going to be a huge impact on traffic, especially on Wilcom and the surrounding streets. So again, my big concern is not only my child, of course, but all the other kids that live in this neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. So again, if you would like to testify on this item tonight, please go ahead and virtually raise your hand. I still see a couple of hands left, but just want to make sure that we've got everybody in queue there. And we'll next hear from Patrick Spouts. Patrick, please go ahead and unmute and start with your name and address when you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Spouts. I live at 912 West Brumbach, Boise, 83702. And I'm calling in this evening to speak in support of this project. I think this kind of moderately dense infill, new sort of starter home option is exactly what Boise needs. I want to echo some of Nina's comments from earlier about how it opens up new potential options for people in that market and is compatible with a diverse set of housing options on the bench. With regard to some of the traffic things that I've heard in some other comments, if projects like this may increase some traffic in the hyper-local sense, and that is certainly something that's felt by those very nearby. But as a city, projects like this lower traffic globally, putting more housing options in Boise proper, places like on the bench, or I would welcome it where I live as well, reduce traffic, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and that's a good thing for our city and needs to be considered as part of this. So I strongly support projects like this and hope it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spouts. Next, we'll hear from Jared Austin. Jared, please go ahead and unmute when you're ready and start with your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. My name is Jared Austin. I live at 4211 West Fairmont Street. I just would like to say that I am in support of this development here today. Some of Patrick's comments really do echo my own here around the moderate density just being a really good thing for our area. It's a really good use of investments that we've already made as a city and as a community in the area. There are bike lanes in the area. There are 2 bus lines that intersect in this area, making it a really good hub for people who want to have the option to live maybe without a car or with fewer cars. And to also speak to what Patrick said about traffic, his point is really good there. Having these types of housing developments centrally located near amenities really does reduce overall vehicle trips, especially if I can speak a little bit to what folks were saying about kids. If anyone has kids and does move into this development, there are plenty of schools within walking distance of that development. If those families were forced to move farther out, those trips that they would take to and from school would certainly be vehicle trips. This way, though, they have the opportunity to just live a little wider in their young lives and kind of take control and move themselves to school and from school. And that's something that's really freeing. I also like to say that in general, traffic concerns with moderate density projects like this are usually a little overblown. And the apocalypses that are predicted never really end up materializing. I think that this type of development does have adequate parking with it. You could argue that for its position and its connectivity, it might have too much parking. So overall, I'd just like to say I support this project, and I'm excited to see more neighbors here on the bench. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. Next, we'll hear from Alexandra Monhar. Go ahead and please start with your name and address when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Monjar. I live on 2222 West Kootenai Street. And I want to share my personal experience from having recently moved into a townhouse on the bench, very similar to the subdivision that's proposed for this location. It's on about an acre of land and there are 17 homes. We have small garages, but they do fit cars. And actually my unit has a 1-car garage. The proximity to a bike lane and within very short walking distance to bus lanes and within walking distance to a neighborhood activity center allows me to use alternative forms of transportation. And when I go back to my office, I will choose those alternative forms for my daily commute. It is one of the reasons why I chose to live here. And the new construction of this townhome made possible the purchase of my first home. When I moved here, my husband and I vacated an apartment that you would consider a naturally occurring affordable housing, and a young college couple moved into that apartment. So I strongly support the creation of additional density on the bench in areas that are so close to alternative forms of transportation, to daily needs. And I also want to second what Patrick said about the concern about traffic. I do understand that is a huge concern for safety of children on the bench, but the only way that we can truly address that issue is through better street design, increasingly compact land use, and encouraging alternative modes of transportation. And I encourage those who are still on the call who are concerned about safety of children to participate in the 2 ACHD intersection studies that are occurring in the Depot Bench Neighborhood Association, one of which is the Vista and Overland intersection and will impact the sidewalk design of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. So seeing no other hands up, I'm going to loop back down to that phone number again. If we have a caller on the line whose phone number ends in 1944, please go ahead and unmute yourself. This is the last call, and we'd love to hear from you if you are there. Okay, seeing none, and then this is also last call for anybody else that would like to speak on this item. Please go ahead and virtually raise your hand if you have not already participated and would like to. Okay.
Hello?
Great. The phone number has spoken. Please start with your name and address and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Anna Van Lith, and I live on 4911 West Teton Street, and I'm 11 years old, and I walk to Monroe Elementary School every day, and I'll soon be going to South Junior High, and I just want to be able to walk home safely. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Great. We do have one person in the house here. So please go ahead and start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Cameron Coachums. I live at 1913 South Shoshone Street. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm in favor of this proposal. As a millennial renter who lives on the bench, I believe more housing like this is beneficial for me and all of my friends and neighbors who also live on the bench. Because, I mean, a lot of the concerns people have about traffic and things like that, I ride my bicycle on Shoshone Street all the time to my work downtown. And I've never felt unsafe on that road. And I don't think having 15 extra units would make it worse. Example, if I lived on those places, I'd be closer. So I would even be riding my bike. And I believe some of the people who could live there would also be riding their bikes too. Other benefits to the neighborhood, probably one of the best taco trucks in town is right across the street. And so I believe that that would be helpful for them. And I think more minority owned businesses should have money get sent to them by eating their tacos. Arguments against like ugly boxes and stuff like that. I don't think anyone describes Overland as the prettiest street in Boise. And I mean, these boxes are people's homes. And I think that that's what we really need to look at, that even though they might be ugly to some people's opinions, people will be living there, people will be paying taxes and stuff like that. And I think that's beneficial for the city. And speaking about that single family home, it hasn't been a single family home for 50 years. And I think that's strange that we describe it like that. And even though it's been an office, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. It is a great taco truck. Okay, next, oh wait, we have one more hand that just went up. Misty, go ahead and please, oh, and Willa's hand is up again too. Okay. Misty, please go ahead and start with your name and address, and you're welcome to turn on your video if you'd like to.
Can you hear me?
I can.
My name is Jason Butts. Misty and I live at 947 South Shoshone. And we are in opposition of the current standard that you guys have on this project or is being presented. I think everybody's kind of hit on the same things that have been in opposition. The safety is number one, the parking, common areas, the bike lane has reduced parking substantially. And I think that we need to reconsider the look of Boise. This is a gateway, Vista and Overland. I kind of disagree with Overland not being the prettiest street in Boise. I don't think the North End was once the prettiest street in Boise either. I don't think that's what this is about. I think what this is about is, yes, we're trying to create more homes for more individuals, but we need to do it appropriately, and we need to consider the people that have invested and purchased family style living in the bench. The bench, Kootenai, Shoshone has been a very, for lack of a better word, historic area of Boise, just as the North End. And if we start to change the look of it now, it really just kind of opens up the floodgate to what could potentially happen. Single entrance on Shoshone is a very dangerous proposition. And then even if we made a second entrance on Overland that close to a stoplight, we're creating a significant challenge in the area. Common areas, I don't know, I agree with some of the other speakers, presenters, that there really isn't a common area. Our yards become common areas. And that's about all I have. I do realize that this project may go through. I just think that some strong consideration needs to be taken into place for the look of it and truly the density of it.
Thank you, Jason. Next, we'll hear from Willa. And if there's anybody, this is the last call, anybody else that would like to testify with new information, please virtually raise your hand. Go ahead, Willa, start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, my name is Willa Pigeon, and I live at 2820 West Clark Street with my husband and 3 kids. And I'm gonna sound like a broken record, I know, but the safety of my kids and the neighborhood children is huge to me and my family and neighbors. So I'm hoping that will be taken into consideration, and hopefully in the design and looking at things, trying to figure out a way to keep these kids safe, because this neighborhood is their safe haven. They all play, they go to school, they can do anything. And it just makes me sad that this could possibly bring in so many cars, our street from Abs to Abs to Clark, like that's used as a shortcut to get from Vista to Overland. So I just hope that all these kids have an impact on hopefully a new design. That's it. Sorry.
Great. Thank you, Willa. Okay, seeing no further hands, we will next move to rebuttal from the applicant. Mr. Semple, you'll have 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Ben Semple, 1014 South LaPointe Street, Suite 3, Boise, Idaho 83706. So a couple of the quick ones, style of the townhomes and design architecture. Again, we're going to go through design review, have a lot of conversations about how we're going to incorporate materials and colors to tie in these new townhomes with the existing structure on the site. And then water pressure, we did get some feedback from Suez. They indicated that there was plenty of water pressure for fire protection on this project. So I would imagine if that's the case, then water pressure in general should be fine regardless of this project. Next, I want to touch on the current building just to reinforce this is a business right now. I think it's a staffing or a nursing scheduling business that generates more traffic than a residential project does. This could be another AutoZone or an O'Reilly's or something similar, that 2 of which occur about half a block down Overland, maybe a couple blocks, not entirely sure. This is an attempt to, in a limited office with design review zone, incorporate some residential housing, modest housing, 2-bedroom. These are not giant 3-car garages as exist at some of the other residences nearby or in general, but adding parking does not encourage alternative transportation use, and it turns into what you see on the site today, which is a big parking lot with a couple RVs that may or may not move, and then other cars left there. Becomes kind of unsightly. People start using that surface parking when there's excess to store things like vehicles that don't run. Not everyone that moves into a house has multiple cars, especially when they're looking at a townhome or a smaller unit. Single family does not require guest parking. There's 2-car garages for each unit, and there's no requirement for on-site guest parking. We are incorporating as much as we possibly can. Would we like to have more? Sure. But ultimately that then overparks a project. If this was a 33-unit apartment complex, I think that there would be more of an issue with traffic. The entry and exit of this project is not a right out only project. ACHD has not restricted the movement of the entry and exit of this. You can make a turn left out of this to the light. Can you do it every time because of traffic? Maybe not, but not everyone is turning right and driving through the smaller surface streets through people's neighborhoods. I have 2 kids that I've raised in Boise, my youngest graduating high school this year. I'm sensitive. I live on a small street and people drive by too. It's where we live in an urban environment with traffic. If we can get people that are using alternative modes of transportation like the Shoshone Bikeway and the multiple bus routes in the area, it reduces traffic. It's counterintuitive, but density does help alleviate traffic problems. And that is, and I would encourage, and I did discuss this with one of the neighbors, if people on the call that are in the neighborhood, reach out to ACHD and ask them about traffic studies in the area to encourage them to look at traffic calming measures, whether that's speed bumps or additional, routing or some sort of traffic calming. That is ACHD's job, and they will look at that if there's enough concerns raised. And I would stand for any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Semple. That'll
Thank
be
you.
all at this point. We will close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is now before the commission.
Nothing. Okay. Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
for the purposes of discussion at the very least, I'll make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that item PUD 21-10 and sub 21-18 be approved with accordance to the terms and condition of the staff report.
Great. So I think to clarify, that would be a recommend approval for PUD 21-10 and approve PUD 21-10 and recommend approval for SUB 21-18.
Correct. Do you need me to restate that?
I think we're good.
Okay,
Madam
sorry.
Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that
Madam
motion?
Chairman.
Great. A second from Commissioner Gillespie.
Madam Chairman, just a point of order. I was wondering if the motion maker also wanted to incorporate the suggested amendments to item conditions 5 and 7 that were suggested by Kevin in his staff report tonight.
Yes, that was included in the late correspondence. So I would imagine that when we say terms and conditions, including terms and conditions in the staff report, that's inclusive of the late correspondence as well. Is that correct,
Yes,
Commissioner?
with the latest and greatest details that are in the terms and condition of the staff report.
Excellent. And is that supported by Commissioner Gillespie as the seconder? Yes, we are getting a big thumbs up. Perfect. Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I recognize, first of all, let me take a step back. And a lot of people came out or online and testified both for and against, and that's always appreciated. And we definitely listen to that and consider every point that's made. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that. And again, appreciate their time. What I see in this instance is there's a lot of sort of hemming and hawing here. We have a zoning ordinance that does not prohibit what is being proposed. That's an us problem. If it's something that is not to be in the city of Boise and has been outlawed, banned, what have you, in other cities, then it seems to me that we need to get our own house in order and not necessarily deny the application because they're doing what is being asked as according to the zoning ordinance. So I don't know how we can prohibit the application based on our own zoning ordinance. When it comes to our comprehensive plan, which kind of gets to the next step, this is a conditional use permit request, at least in part. And so because of that, we have the ability to not only look at our zoning ordinance, but also our comp plan. And our comp plan does have a lot of language that suggests that the types of things that are in this application, and may not be perfect, certainly, are encouraged. And so I do believe that our comp plan does support this. With regard to the traffic generation, that's the one that frustrates me a little bit, because as has been discussed, this site is actually approved for a number of things, including residential that could have up to 40 units. per acre, which would generate a significant additional amounts of traffic than what is initially going to be generated. But in addition, one of the key things with this application, I believe, is that every one of them is going to have office spaces because it's tailored for a professional class, generally speaking, that we hope, will take advantage of that and do some of the work at home stuff that's been happening. The applicant was asked to save the home. It was a request made of the neighborhood association and other folks that he met with, and he did it. And they've done that as much as they can. Does it look different, silly, what have you, whatever their, subjective terms? That's a different issue, but I do believe that they did their best to make that happen, as well as some of the trees that are on site. I think they've made a good effort to try to maintain and keep as many of the trees as possible. So I can keep going, but I'm going to stick with that and let my other commissioners do more talking than me. So for those reasons, though, I'll support the motion to approve.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
I'm also in support of the motion. I think the applicant worked with the neighborhood association and commend him for that. Just responding to some of those really common comments that we received in our packets. In addition, and just thinking about the site plan, I know while it's not necessarily ideal and in some jurisdictions it might not be allowed, looking at the site plan as it stands, it does minimize some of that overlook onto the existing residences on the north and helps with some of those conflicts as well. And I'm comfortable with amended or with the condition number 2 requiring that kind of design review overlay for the Overland Street frontage. I think that'll help with that frontage and help improve and really think about Overland as well. And with those and everything that's been stated are the reasons that I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Do we have Commissioner Finfrock? I saw you trigger finger there.
No, Madam Chair, I just want to add that, this applicant is also, they've adhered to the density, height, and parking requirements. And so for the most part, it seems like we've asked a lot of them, and they've complied with the neighborhood association, with the city. And I just think at this point, we should push it forward and let design review hopefully come up with a plan to mitigate the side of the housing issue that seems to be going on right now. So for that reason, I'm also in support of the motion.
Madam Chair.
Squires.
So I have 3 or 4 categories that I was taking notes on. So I agree with. First, the density. I think I would encourage even higher density in this location, honestly. I agree with the type of housing. I think townhomes are a great fit. I agree with the amount of parking. I live in a similar development. It works, and I don't have any issues with that. I disagree with the keeping of the existing home, which impedes good urban design. But I understand this meets the code with the conditions imposed. That design review will review this app. We have an opportunity, I will just note for design review, that with this redevelopment on Overland, we have the opportunity to transform this corridor one project at a time. And I hope they take this opportunity. And I hope that during this zoning ordinance rewrite, these type of slot developments are denied in the future, and that ACHD will monitor the traffic counts on nearby roads and installs traffic calming if necessary. And for all of these reasons, I will be supporting the motion.
Okay. Commissioner Blanchard.
Sorry, thank you. I will not be supporting this motion. I believe it is indefensible with our current zoning and with our comprehensive plan. I would just point to page 174 of the Boise Development Code, chapters 1106. And everything I see here on multifamily living uses is nothing that Ben has presented tonight looks anything like any of these. And should we just tear this page out of our code if we're not going to use it? So that would be the first one. That I personally just feel affronted with this site plan. And the only thing that can remedy this project is a site plan that is appropriate, that meets standards of basic urban design. I just think it's really a slap in the face that this is even brought to us. I could point to numerous places in the Boise blueprint that like similar building massing informed to ensure that infill development appears compatible with existing adjacent homes. Well, it doesn't with the home that's there, obviously. It does not reinforce the established streetscape characteristics under principle IDP N2. How can you have every single building on Overland Street fronts Overland Street? And this is why communities all over are banning this kind of thing. I know we haven't gotten there yet. If I look at the central bench policies, we're to encourage under CBCC on 1.4, the Overland Road Corridor, pedestrian-oriented development. That's development that fronts the street. This is such a not serious proposal that just doesn't meet with any of, I really cannot believe that it really went from bad to worse with the original slot development proposal and now this one with the home, but there's absolutely nothing I can support about this project, and I think it's perfectly defensible to not support it.
All right. So we have a motion before us to approve PUD 21-10 and recommend approval for SUB 21-18, including the late correspondence condition modifications. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
No.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Danley.
Aye.
Motion carries 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
Okay, thanks. We are going to take a 5-minute break before we come back to hear item 7. So we will see you back here at about 7:46 or 7:47. Thank you. Welcome back. We're going to start next with item number 7. This is CAR 21-12 from Penelope Constantikes at 2801 West Police Street, a rezone of roughly 2.23 acres. And we will start with staff. And I think this is Mr. Mainfield's last presentation to us with the city. Is that right?
Madam Chair, it is.
No. Very sad, but please take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. If I could please have my screen shared. I'm not sure who. Awesome. Thank you. Let's hit it. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. The next item before you this evening is a request to rezone a 2.1 acre site and adjacent right-of-way located at 2801 West Palouse Street from R1C, single-family residential, to LOD with a DA, that's limited office with design review overlay, and a development agreement. The subject property is located about a quarter mile south of the Overland and Vista intersection, about 500 feet west of Vista Avenue. The development agreement to which the proposal is tied would limit the site to 40 units, a density of 19.2 units per acre, 35 feet in height, and a minimum of 15-foot setback to surrounding properties. As the height and setbacks mimic those found in the R1C zone, the decision before you tonight is whether or not to support the increased density afforded by the LOD zone and associated development agreement. There is no planned unit development before you this evening. If approved, both a PUD and a design review application would be required to solidify details of the proposal's elevation, layout, and site design. In addition, while not required with the development agreement, a subdivision application would be required if the applicant were to construct the current proposal, which consists of 40 three-story townhomes. The site is designated as compact on the land use map. This designation supports diverse residential development from detached small lot single-family homes to townhomes, apartments, and condos. The comprehensive plan envisions average residential densities of 8 to 15 units per acre. Appropriate and practical residential zones in this land use designation are R1C, R2, and R1M. The comprehensive plan also supports the LO zone in the compact land use designation. While the planning team is generally not supportive of rezoning to office zones to achieve higher residential densities, the applicant's proposal, limited by the development agreement, creatively addresses the need for additional housing within walking distance of myriad commercial services and a robust transportation network. As you can see on the map before you, the site is located about 600 feet east of the Shoshone Bikeway, shown in purple, and about 700 feet south of the Nez Perce Bikeway, shown in red. These routes allow users to easily traverse the bench and beyond by bicycle. The site is less than a fifth of a mile southwest of a bus stop along the Vista Avenue route, one of the most well-served routes in the Valley Regional Transit Network. Oh, sorry, that screen flashed, so I just wanted to make sure everyone is still with me.
We're with you.
Finally, it's about a quarter mile south of a grocery store and the small cluster of restaurants and services located at Overland and Vista. The subject property also lies within 2 designated activity centers, the Overland and Vista Community Activity Center, shown here in blue, and the Targhee and Vista Neighborhood Activity Center, shown in green. The current residential density within the Overland and Vista Community Activity Center, defined by the city's Activity Center Almanac as within half a mile of the intersection of Overland and Vista, is 3.7 units per acre, well below the 12 to 20 units per acre envisioned by the comprehensive plan. The average residential density of the Targhee and Vista Neighborhood Activity Center is slightly higher at 6.6 units per acre. Still, this density is well below the 8 to 16 units per acre envisioned by the plan. At a density of 19.2 units per acre, this project increases the average density within these activity centers, which is exactly what the comprehensive plan supports. If the comprehensive plan desires dense pedestrian-oriented commercial development at these activity centers, then there needs to be a sufficient number of nearby pedestrians to support that commercial development. That is what the applicant is proposing here. to allow an opportunity for more people to live within walking and biking distance of everyday services. With this analysis, the planning team finds that the rezone complies with the comprehensive plan. The planning team also finds that the rezone maintains the compatibility of the surrounding development pattern. Much of the surrounding neighborhood is comprised of detached single-family homes with lots ranging in size from 3,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet. While most of the zoning surrounding the subject property is R1C, which allows for 8 units per acre, many of the subdivisions surrounding the site contain substandard original lots of record. These are 25-foot wide lots that are developable by right with a design review application. The density allowed by these lots approaches 14 units per acre, depending on the lot's depth. In addition, multifamily and townhome projects dot the Depot Bench, Central Bench, and Vista neighborhoods. The densities of these projects range from 11 to nearly 28 units per acre, providing housing options across a broad array of densities and incomes. The project was approved by all commenting agencies. The planning team did receive 27 public comments regarding this project. Most of the comments opposed the project, and the most common concerns were that the project was too dense, that additional traffic would negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood, and that the buildings were too tall. A handful of commenters supported the project, citing the increased need for housing in the area and praising the density. Notably, the only property bounded on 2 sides by the development supported the project's concept, but had some concerns regarding the design of the units nearest his rear yard. If the rezone is approved, these concerns can and should be sorted out through the planned unit development process. Overall, while the rezone to the LOD-DA zone is unorthodox, the project that the rezone is tied to is not. It is something that a visitor might expect to see when they visit the neighborhood. It is predictable. When people look at the development of the area, most don't see a splotch of purple in a sea of yellow. They see a townhome development 500 feet from a major arterial gateway into the city, near restaurants and retail services. The planning team recommends that the commission creatively use their toolbox, the tools in their toolbox, to build the city that the comprehensive plan envisions and approve CAR 21-12. As a reminder, the commission makes a recommendation to the city council on this rezone. Thank you, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield. Next, we'll move to hear from the applicant, Ms. Constantikes. You are up. We'll start with 10 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, for the record, Penelope Constantikes, Post Office Box 405, Boise, Idaho 83701. As you know, this specific application before you this evening is a rezone application with a development agreement for the 4 parcels located at 2801, 2765, and 2793 West Palouse Street. We have reviewed the staff report and concur with the findings and conditions of approval, including the development agreement elements listed in the staff report. The applicant and the project team are excited to present this rezone application to you this evening as a precursor to the Palouse Townhomes PUD and a preliminary plat application for this site. As a follow-up, this is a residential project that is not only a redevelopment of a site, but it's also an infill development. The application was submitted with a full site plan that included all required elements of a PUD, as well as elevations and floor plans. The underlying philosophy of the site design is to create a generous separation between the townhomes and the surrounding residences. By wrapping most of the site with a shared driveway, the separation to shared property lines is at least 36 feet on the east. By orienting the townhomes on the west and south, with the fronts of the homes facing the adjacent parcels, the separation is a minimum of 20 feet plus the external public utilities easement for a total of a 25-foot wide separation. If the rezone is approved, the site will be platted and each townhome will be on a discrete lot, allowing for both owner and leasing residents. Given the current demand for home ownership opportunities in Boise, it is anticipated that there will be a substantial owner presence. Some interesting facts that I found in the Central Bench chapter of Blueprint Boise last night. At the time that Blueprint Boise was written and codified, only 7% of the area in the Central Bench planning area was vacant land. We assume that that number has gone down. Multifamily only represented 4% of the available housing in the Central Bench planning area. The intended development will be townhomes on platted lots, but it is similar to a multifamily in that it includes parking considerations, open space, and amenities to enhance the quality of life. With this proposed townhouse community, an additional variety of housing types are provided, very close to a community activity center and a neighborhood activity center, and about 2.5 blocks from Vista Avenue and one of the primary transit lines. This area of the bench has a substantial presence of substandard lots of record. And maybe Ethan could put that illustration up. Ethan's got red blocks around them. There's even more than what's shown on that map. With Boise's recently enhanced standards, substandard lots of record, these homes are now very nice and are required to meet appropriate standards. This rezone, however, will elevate the site to an even higher standard through the CUP-PUD process and design review. The Central Bench policies include discussion about the Vista corridor that encourages higher density residential use and specific calls out for promotion of the assemblage of small parcels to accommodate larger redevelopment opportunities where feasible. Given the current development climate and the rapidly increasing cost and availability of land area that can be assembled, this is truly a very unique opportunity. The applicant is asking for a reasonable density and providing a well thought out development proposal to follow approval of the rezone. The site is laid out to be context sensitive with attention to setbacks, open space, and amenities. The architecturally designed townhomes will have 2 full-size garage bays, and guest parking is substantially greater than the Boise City standards. These townhomes will be constructed by the second generation of one of Boise's most premier builders. Further discussion about site design and elevations should occur with the design review phase of the project if we get our rezone. The staff report is very comprehensive in its evaluation of the proposed rezone and the context, both immediate and within the greater neighborhood. Rather than taking additional time to repeat the staff report, I encourage you to ask me questions so that I can target your specific areas of interest. The rezone designation is simply a function of available options. The point is the development agreement, which provides clear standards for development of the site and stipulates density. And I might add that the gross density of the site is 17.93, which we would round up to 18, of course. The height is going to be identical to R1C and R2 at 35 feet. Setbacks, there is one area where we have a minimum 15-foot wide setback. Everywhere else, the structures are at least 25 feet away from any shared property line. And the development agreement also references privacy of adjacent neighbors. In conclusion, we believe the requested rezone with the development agreement will facilitate a high-quality redevelopment of the site that meets the spirit and intent of Boise City Code, Blueprint Boise, and the Central Bench policies and goals. With this, we respectfully request a recommendation of approval, and I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Before questions, we'll get to the neighborhood association.
Very good.
This is the Vista Neighborhood Association. Dave, are you representing again? Come on up. Please start again with your name and address, and you'll have up to 10 minutes.
My name is Dave Kangas, 1715 Canal Street, and I am president of the Vista Neighborhood Association. And the Vista Neighborhood Association is strongly opposed to this rezone. Just for reference, we have been receiving a ton of applications lately. And the first thing we look at is, does it need a rezone? Does it need variances? If it meets the zoning, no variances, there's not really a lot to talk about. You might tweak design or location, but there's not a lot to complain about. So I'm not down here very often. Design review and the current guidelines have made a lot of great developments in our neighborhood. A couple have been built and more under construction, including high density. The planner here has one on Vista, a combination of apartments and townhomes that work. It's zoned right, it's right on Vista, it's correct. This project is in the middle of R1C single-family homes. There are 2-story single-family homes people have bought in that neighborhood, realizing the whole thing is R1C. It does not butt up to Vista or any other arterial. There are no other high-density properties around it. Zoning this for high density is inappropriate. Do we recognize that there's going to be redevelopment in the area? Of course. And all the neighbors around it recognize it. But again, it's surrounded by single family, single level, and 2-story homes. As I read through the planner's report, I was struck by how far the city goes to accommodate a development. It really feels like a developer came in and said, this is what I want to build here. How do I get it done? We've tweaked LO. Obviously, if it's zoned residential, as residential zoning, there would be a number of variances. It's going through LO, design review, design or development agreement. I don't know where resident input surrounding property owners is included in that. It doesn't seem like it really matters. I'm not sure that I'm doing any good. I was taken aback also, after 20 years of being involved in neighborhood associations, this is the first time I realized that an activity center would be used to upzone an area. I'd never heard that an activity center has to meet prescribed zoning. That really angers me. An activity zone is a commercial area designed to draw people there to eat, drink, exercise. I had no idea it's supposed to be used as an upzone. That's wrong and it's alarming, especially when you look at the radius of the Vista Overland and how large the commercial properties are around there, including railroad property, including school grounds. Well, yeah, the density is going to be low. I think that's just wrong. If you look at the map and the properties that the planner highlighted as multifamily, every single one of them abut to other high density commercial properties or arterials, every single one. And that's appropriate site form. It's interesting that the Targhee activities zone would be considered under density, considered as Oak Tree or Oak Park apartments and Brampton Square townhomes there. That's a huge high density project, but somehow the activity center comes in under zoning for the compact zone. Something's wrong. I do not see how or understand why a developer's purchase price should put the onus on the neighborhood to justify that, what he wants to plan. What is zoned for the property should relegate what the purchase price is. If he wants to pay more, then that's on him. It shouldn't fall on all the property owners, neighborhood associations, and everybody to back up and defend themselves so he can do something. LO, office. How did they come up with that? It's not attached to any office properties. There's not any office properties proposed on the site. There's not any mixed use properties proposed on the site. Basically, they created a plan or zoning to make it fit. If this was zoned high density residential, the way they have it laid out and probably why they went to LO, they didn't want to go residential and ask for 3 or 4 variances to make this plan fit their site. it really seems like that it's, I want smaller lots. I want higher density. I want more height. So pick a zone for it and make it work for me. These parcels, and I'm going to hit on it again. These parcels are not contiguous to any other high density properties, and they are not on an arterial. They're surrounded by single family homes. The Vista neighborhood has a huge mix of homes and properties, from rundown trailer courts to well-run trailer courts to subsidized housing to city housing to nice single-family areas to townhomes. It has everything. When we have an area like this detached from any arterial that is set for single family, we need to fight for single family. It's here to, you know, that's what it is. I understand that we need more homes, but, and again, when the project is in the right area, we're not fighting it. When you look at other high density projects like Oak Park, which has 3-story apartments in the center and Brampton Square around it, the Brampton Square are 2-story townhomes that buffer to the residential area. You don't have step out your front door and look at a 3-story building. If you're living across the street on Palouse or Taggart or Lemhi and you go into your backyard and you look out, you're looking at apartments. That's the way they look. That's the way they're designed. They're boxy. There's no really character to them. You can call them modern, but they're boxy and plain, and they look like apartments. That's what you get to look at out in your backyard. That's not correct. That's not what people bought into the area for, realizing they're backing up to the property. As a real estate agent, anybody that looks at that type of property, first thing they ask, well, what can go there? Well, it's zoned R1C. It's not zoned R3. It's not zoned anything like that. So you're putting all the property owners around it on their back heels and on the defense. Again, when I looked at the other high density projects that were highlighted in the report, every single one of them is on an arterial. In my letter that I'm going to read, zoning is supposed to matter. The city of Boise and many others have made significant investments to create planning and zoning departments, zoning districts and code, even planning documents like Blueprint Boise, neighborhood plans, and the comprehensive plan. Currently, the city of Boise is engaged in an extensive rewrite effort to supposedly solve all these issues so we don't have to be here. This rewrite effort will cost taxpayers millions of dollars and thousands of volunteer and staff hours. Yet despite all these efforts to get things just right, the ink won't be dry before the rezone applications come in. If zoning matters, more preference needs to be given to the surrounding residents, because if rezone are going to take precedent, why are we going through a rewrite? Just scrap it and go stay with the rezone. Doesn't make any sense, and it's not right. In the process of looking through the responses, I believe all the emails that they received were against it. I created a survey, which we had 97 responses to ask 10 basic questions about the development. Overwhelmingly, they were against the development. When I looked through his items for criteria for approval, it is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. It's R1C and we're rezoning it to LO. It's not attached to anything. It's not next to anything. That makes zero sense. It's in the best interest of public convenience and general welfare. For who? Certainly not the property owners. And being part of the neighborhood association, I don't want to realize that most of the neighborhood is compact. So now every parcel there is subject to a rezone. This is a precedent establishing decision on our neighborhood. It's not right. No, I'm out of time.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, great. We'll now move to questions from the commission for staff, the applicant, or the neighborhood association.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Ethan, I have a few questions to ask. To start with, if I interpreted your presentation right and it's accurate, I think that what I saw was that, but right now, these properties have the right to develop up to 16 units as in total by existing code or existing zone, right?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is correct.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Also in the presentation, I see two neighborhood activity centers. The one that is closest to the parcel shows a maximum of 16 units per acre, the Targi Activity Center. That's the 1/4 mile distance, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is correct. That is the envisioned average density for the neighborhood activity centers.
Okay, and the Overland, Overland and Vista Activity Center, which we are also citing as reason to potentially grant this rezone, does go up to 20 units per acre. Just making sure that's correct. Okay, so the question I have is which one carries the water? Because we have two neighborhood activity centers, they're overlapping, but this property happens to be half again closer to one than the other. So, I'm trying to understand how the Overland Activity Center plays into this particular property when it's actually closer to the Targi and Vista Activity Center.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is certainly a little vague in the comprehensive plan and how our activity centers should be interpreted. I like to picture it as some sort of like gravitational pull. I'm sure there's a model out there that you could use, but the community activity center is larger, and yet the site's slightly farther away, whereas the neighborhood activity center is smaller, yet the site is slightly closer. So I think it's the commission's discretion how they'd like to interpret that.
Okay, Madam Chair, one more question.
Yeah, please, Commissioner Danley.
Ethan, on page, it's 260 of our overall report, but we have this discussion, and I don't know that I saw it resolved, about potentially, I think it's fuel tanks underneath the property that may or may not exist. Can you clarify, did we ever find out definitively on whether or not that is the case?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality does have record that those were removed safely. However, as you note in the comments, the analyst who commented, does ask that, if there is more concern regarding that it could be dug into more deeply. However, she has no reason to believe they were not removed safely.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So for the rezone NDA, is there a reason for the move from applying a DA to a residential zone and using the DA to determine your density versus rezoning and using the DA to determine your dimensional standards? So I hope that makes sense.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
I'll try again, Madam Chair.
Please, Commissioner Moore.
So I could see this going in two different ways. One would be, as we are proposing here, with a rezone to achieve the density desired, and a development agreement to achieve dimensional standards that would be fitting for the neighborhood. The other option that I could foresee would be maintaining the zone, but applying a development agreement to achieve the desired density. Is there a reason for one option versus the other?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, that is actually essentially what we're doing here. The density is kind of the overriding feature of each independent zone. So absent a development agreement from that LO zone, that has a 43.5 units per acre maximum. Whereas even if we had a development agreement with the R1C zone or the R1M or the R2, we could not exceed the maximum units per acre associated with that zone. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner
Yes.
Moore.
Yes, it does make sense. Thank you.
Excellent.
Cool.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
I have some additional if
Great,
anybody else
yeah.
has. So for the elevations, I know one of the comments was about the boxy elevations. Are elevations required for a rezone such as this one?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, we typically do like to see elevations. Again, typically we see PUDs and rezones come in together. But that said, the applicant did provide a site plan and elevations with this rezone application. And I'm happy to bring those up if it's of interest, if you'd like to look at them.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
No, that's okay. But these elevations would kind of come along again, maybe in a more developed form in the associated PUD and design review application.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, that's absolutely correct.
Commissioner Moore, did you have additional questions? You might as well. hit
Madam
it.
Chair,
Well,
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know one of the other items was high density, and this, I think I've seen in the staff report, this was titled kind of a medium density. Is high density versus medium density, is that defined in code anywhere?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, so we do have different land use designations and different zoning districts, and they all kind of have a different definition of high density and medium density. For example, the R2 zone is our medium density residential zone. That allows 14.5 units per acre. The R3 zone is 43.5 units per acre. That's the high density residential zone. And then we have our land use designations. Compact is our medium density land use, residential land use designation. And obviously we have a high density residential, land use designation as well. They're a little more wishy-washy on their criteria, on their density limits.
Right. Thank you. And that was all.
Okay, great. Commissioner Gillespie, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ethan, I'm struggling a little bit trying to understand the jump from R1C to LO. There's it's either the second or third approval criteria says that the proposed zone is sort of, consistent with the surrounding area. And I'm really struggling with the city's explanation of why LO is consistent even with the DA. And in particular, I'm looking at your slide that's up and I'm looking at R2 and saying, just for this commissioner, R2 seems like a good fit, a better fit. So I was wondering if you could explain why the city is proposing LO when R2 is also clearly available, and how you'd help us think about which is the more appropriate.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, certainly. I'd be happy to take a stab at that. The R2 is certainly an appropriate zone for this area. There's no doubt about that. The R2 and the R1M are both appropriate here. The real difference, as you can see, is the density. That's kind of what we're talking about here. And so, our position is that, you have a site that's surrounded by right 14 units per acre density in these substandard lots. So these little townhomes, 25-foot wide townhomes, are allowed by right in much of the surrounding neighborhood. We found that it was not a large jump to go from 14 to 19 units per acre. It was not a jarring experience to make that happen. In addition, the city is really supportive of density near these major transit corridors. And if you look at, where the current mixed use and, that corresponds with C2 and R3 a lot of the time along Vista Avenue, frequently it's just one parcel, which, may not achieve even if those were developed fully, that may not achieve the desired community activity center vibe that these activity centers in our comprehensive plan are envisioning. So given the fact that the activity centers allow for this kind of increased average density, this subject site allows, increases the average density of the surrounding area. We thought it appropriate to allow for this increased density in this location, given the amenities that surround it, given the walkability of the site, and the other things that I've discussed in my report.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Ethan, I hope this doesn't put you on the spot. It might. Apologize in advance if I do. My question, I guess, though, is given the area up here, are there any other places in specifically, as in our map area in particular, that are zoned limited office, but built out in residential style to get to the densities that we're talking about here? Or is this sort of an island potentially?
So we just did recently recommend or approved a PUD in the LOD zone just north of here. Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, I'm sorry. That was on the Overland Road corridor, so it certainly was slightly different. As I said, it is atypical for us to rezone to an office zone to allow residential development. So in essence, if viewed that way, yes. Additionally, the LO zone is supported by the compact land use designation. So it isn't a loud kind of leap, it's a logical jump to move there. But certainly you are correct. It could be viewed as such.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further questions from the commission, we'll now move to public testimony. So if you are interested in speaking on this item tonight, please come on up to the front and we'll sort of form a queue if anybody here is interested. And otherwise, if you're online, please virtually raise your hand. We'll start in person here. So come on up. You'll have 3 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Nick Katsianis. I live at 2845 West Palouse Street. And we are the only property that shares two borders with the proposed development plan. I'll keep it kind of quick and simple here. I know there are many items that will be discussed during the PUD meeting, but honestly, in general, we are in favor of the concept. We would like to see the current lot improved to really improve the look and feel of the neighborhood. Currently, it's what you could think of as a junkyard directly behind our house. Every morning, there's a fencing company that arrives at 7 a.m. and we hear them. Our dog barks. Something would be much improved. Some type of development. That said, there are certain areas that I'd like to put on the record now that do concern us being property owners right next to this place. And one is what is now, I believe, the 15-foot separation between our property and the proposed property line coming in. that feels very like invasive of our privacy in our backyard, especially with the elevation of the proposed homes. That would be an area or an item that we would be very opposed to, but certainly have ideas to propose, constructive solutions. Additionally, along the east border of our property line, this would essentially make our property a corner lot. And with the traffic, the flow of the traffic coming in and out, we would like to see some type of obstruction, some type of fencing, something to at least, ease the noise and the traffic that comes through. That along with, other ideas of planting trees or something to obstruct the view being that it is going to be so close from one of the entryway streets to our property line. Right now we have that a lot of neighbors have is a lot of space up there. I think that is one thing that a lot of people are going to want to maintain. And with 30-foot townhomes, I think that's going to be hard to achieve, which again, we are in favor of the development of something going in to be approved and improve our neighborhood. But those would probably be the main issues that I think myself would have, or I would have, along with a lot of neighbors, including traffic. That's not something that's going to be really directly impacted towards our property. But yeah, that's all I have for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, Brian Hagee, 2873 West Palouse. I am the neighbor of the nice man back there. I haven't met him yet, but maybe I will after this meeting. I would like to say the same thing that he said, and that is, it is a junkyard. They're actually storing RVs there. And so it would be great to have a new neighborhood within our neighborhood. However, I'm strongly opposed to the increase in density. Someone said, I believe, actually it was the developer behind me said that they believe it would enhance the quality of life. I say, whose quality of life is it going to enhance? I don't think it's going to enhance my quality of life as a guy living next to 40 townhouses in a place that's been zoned for only 8. The density is the biggest issue that I would like to address. And it's been talked to quite a bit here tonight, and I think there's good reason for it. In the last briefing that we had, we're talking about taking density from a higher density of 40 down to whatever it was, 19 or 16. That seemed fairly easy to me to come to that conclusion. Now we're talking about 8, going from 8 per acre all the way up to, sounds like almost 20 per acre. And that does not sound to me like a good jump in the neighborhood that I bought my house in to be on a nice single family street. I looked for over a year for my house. I wanted it south facing. I wanted it close to the airport, close to Boise State, in a single family neighborhood. I drive into my street. That's exactly what I have right now. You put 40 townhouses in there, it's going to change the street dramatically. Going from R1 to LO, question was asked by one of the commissioners, why we're doing that. The answer was it's that other lots could be developed into 14 and that 19 was not jarring or not a leap. I actually say it is jarring and I say it is a leap. And I think it's pushing it way too far. It is very different than the Overland corridor, and I think it should be treated as such. The gentleman behind me talked at length about the fact that this is not touching Vista, it's not touching a major corridor, and that kind of density should not be on a neighborhood that's full of single family houses. And I hope that you guys would see it that way. Another question I have, I know it can't be answered in this meeting, but in the last meeting, we talked about a house that was there and they didn't want to tear it down. Nobody's mentioned that you're tearing down 3 single family houses to put this development in. My question is why? Why was it an issue before? It's not an issue in this development. Probably because they want higher density, so they don't talk about it. And then the last thing is, I don't know all the rules about neighborhood or community activity centers and what drives what as far as density, but it doesn't seem like taking a community center and then creating density because of the community center, no matter where it is, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. All right, thanks for listening.
Thank you. I think we had one more in-house here. Please start with your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Cameron Coachums. I live at 1913 South Shoshone Street. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm in full support of this rezoning application. Like many on the bench, I rent. And since graduating college from the University of Idaho, go Vandals in 2017, every $1,000 I've saved to be able to buy a house, I feel like housing prices have gone up 10, 20, don't quote me, but a lot of money. And, you know, beggars can't be choosers. And so basically the only option I'm going to have is a dense townhome if I want to stay in my neighborhood. And so that's why I'm supporting this. I think it's very close to Vista. Like, I'm twice as far away. I'm just like a neighborhood, a block away. And I walk to that bus stop all the time. I walk my dog to the vet across the street. I bike to the Albertsons down the street. Like, it's a very walkable area. Going off of Vista, the arterial, I think is very beneficial for people and stuff. And I don't think it'll really affect the neighborhood that much. I do want it to go on record that there are a lot of wild bunnies that live in the neighborhood for some reason. So if there could be like a bunny sign, bunny crossing, I think that'd be beneficial to the neighborhood to keep the bench feel. I was a census enumerator last fall. I met a lot of neighbors in this area, and a lot of them are rental homes with like lots of, people renting each room and stuff like that. And I think that will be beneficial to have more townhomes in the area. And protect the bunnies, I think, is my main issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, seeing nobody else in the chambers here, we'll move to our online participation. I see a couple of hands up. If you are interested in participating in this item, please virtually raise your hand now. We'll just start working our way down the list. We will start with Natasha Tolley. Please go ahead and unmute. You can turn on your video if you'd like to and start with your name and address. Natasha, you'll have 3 minutes. Natasha, do we still have you there online? Okay, we'll pause on Natasha and move to Patrick. Patrick's name and
my apologies.
Natasha. Hi, Natasha.
I'm so sorry. So my name is Natasha Tolley and I live at 2750 West Palouse Street. I am directly across from the proposed site. I live in a 1936 bench home that I've been in for nearly 10 years. And for a lot of the reasons stated, I chose this neighborhood because of the lot sizes, the single family homes. I do have significant concerns for the rezoning to LO for this location, mainly because it will double the density on this Palouse Street. I'm talking directly between Vista Avenue and Shoshone Street. There are currently 24 houses on this street, and with the proposal, it would, on that one site, would be 40 houses. That's an increase of 200%. The city commissioner, Ethan Mansfield, mentioned that it has walkability to the neighboring areas. There are no sidewalks on Ave Street. That is a main arterial of this location in and out of that proposed zone. That creates a safety hazard for those that work and live in this area, in addition to children. I'm not against the development of the location. I do believe that there is a more appropriate zoning for it, or to remain the current zoning with the development of 16 homes, which would increase the density in this space. I do appreciate your guys' time and have also submitted my comments to the city of Boise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Tolley. So next we'll hear from Patrick Spouts. Patrick, when you're ready, please name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Spouts. I live at 912 West Brumback, Boise 83702. And I'm calling in this evening to testify in support of this development. Like the earlier development that I testified on, I think these kind of moderate density increases in our neighborhoods is a helpful and useful thing that'll help people, such as the gentleman that testified earlier, I think his name was Cameron, have an opportunity to own a home and be part of those neighborhoods. I also want to touch on a couple of things that I've heard throughout the discussion and testimony on this particular project. One is about the multiple activity centers. And I think that being part of 2 activity centers is kind of a stronger argument for using the max than just being part of 1. It'd be a little bit odd to be part of an activity center and then be part of another activity center and have the effect of being part of multiple activity centers to actually lower your ability to have activity. So things right outside of the kind of the overlap of those 2 circles being higher than just inside the overlap of the 2 circles. And additionally, I want to speak up for the concept of adding density on the interior of our neighborhoods. And I will note that many of the comments today were about single family homes, which I believe these are. They'll be owned by individuals and they meet that definition as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, my personal story with regard to building infill that's sort of inside neighborhoods. I used to live in kind of the hills behind the north end in one of the apartments, and I think the village apartments up on Boise Hill Road, which is where Brumback goes up there. And a fair amount of traffic, of course, goes through the north end, then goes up the hill to enter all of those apartment complexes. And I benefited from living in what is effectively kind of an interior zone with relatively dense multifamily. I now live at the bottom of the hill on Brumback, and the traffic that goes up the hills is fine. And that's something that's sort of part of the neighborhood. I benefited from having that opportunity to live in an interior neighborhood in a multifamily development. And I think a lot of other people should have the opportunity to live in the interior neighborhoods. These, again, are available for purchase. But as a general concept, I think that's great. I think the idea that all denser development needs to be pushed just only to arterials is not necessarily the greatest thing. So I think this is a great development, and I hope that we move it forward so many families, possibly Cameron and many others, have a chance to live in this great neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spouts. Next, we'll hear from Alexandra Monhar. Please start again with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, Alexandra Monjar, 2222 West Kootenai Street. I agree with what was said earlier that this is a precedent-setting case, and I hope that the commission sets the precedent as one of approval for increased density in this area in alignment with Blueprint Boise and neighborhood visions. One of the highest valued visions for the Vista and Depot Bench neighborhoods is that residents are able to live and enjoy the neighborhood without the requirement of a motor vehicle. Transit researchers and planners have determined that the minimum density required to support high-frequency bus service is 8 dwelling units per acre. The average density for the activity centers, as you saw, is proposed to be between 8 and 16 or 12 to 20 units per acre, and the current averages fall very far short. That means that we need to increase the density to a much higher level than 16 to 20 units per acre to increase the average density to meet the vision for the neighborhood. It is not unusual for the LO zone to abut the R1C zone in Boise, and typically this zone and other higher density zones are used as a buffer for single family zones to commercial areas. I do believe that the idea that multifamily projects should be buffers to noise and pollution generated by corridors and commercial centers for single family home owners is elitist and environmentally unjust. It also ignores the fact that some of the most desirable neighborhoods in Boise and other cities are those that have multifamily buildings and higher density attached homes fully integrated into the neighborhood and adjacent to single family homes. This project site is located in a level 2 area of change, which anticipates increased density for the exact reason indicated by the applicant, that there is a very small amount of vacant land remaining on the bench, and this neighborhood is a close-in neighborhood that should be accommodating its fair share of our valley's growth. The bench, the north end, the east end should all have much higher densities throughout than the predominant R1 zoning if we are to be serious about being a sustainable city resilient to climate change and one that provides a home for everyone. The character and density of the bench has been constantly evolving. The most constant feature of a healthy neighborhood is that change is allowed and occurs to meet the needs of current generations. The bench has been known as a family-oriented neighborhood, and what families need now is affordability and proximity to existing amenities and resources that the bench can provide with significantly increased density. Please support this project.
Thank you, Ms. Manjar. Next, we'll hear from David Glancy. David, please unmute when you're ready. You can start your video if you'd like to. Start with your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes, please.
Hi, I'm David Glancy. I live at 2111 North Philippi. I'm testifying on behalf of my mother who lives just down the street from here on ABS. I'm against the project. One of the reasons is it's in an unimproved area. So there's no sidewalks on ABS. So the density and the extra traffic would be an issue. The scale of the project is just a little bit too high for this. I would fully support anything that would be 16 units per acre. That seems amenable. Let's see what else. Ethan had mentioned something about development by right, and that takes into account existing streets and things like that. This would add alleys and then driveways, 2 accesses onto Palouse, which would ultimately drive everyone up ABS or up Palouse, and it's just an extension of the driveway for these 40 new units, putting basically anyone living on ABS or Palouse in their driveway, if that makes sense. So walkability is an issue because there's no sidewalks on ABS. Palouse, just across from the site, doesn't have sidewalks. I'm all for development. This site needs to be fixed. It used to be a trucking hub, then it turned into a hub for a fencing company. But the next step needs to be develop it and integrate it into the community as far as like the Vista Vision neighborhood plan that says, you know, build to the same scale. Well, if you have a single family home, it's 1 story, and then you put a 3-story building next to it, even if it's 50 feet away after a street, a buffer, everything else, they're just going to be looking down into the backyards. There's not really any way around that except for a mixture of development unit types within that site. So 5 buildings exactly the same smashed onto one site doesn't seem appropriate here. It needs to actually fit. It needs to have some buffering, whether it be landscaping or smaller buildings. Yeah, so for those reasons, I'm kind of against the project, and I hope that you are against it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Glancy. Next, we'll hear from Jason Butts. Please go ahead and unmute when you're ready. You can turn your video on if you'd like, and please start with your name and address.
Hello again, Jason Butts here, 947 South Shoshone Street. I testified earlier on the previous topic. I wouldn't say wholeheartedly that I'm against this project, just as before, but I do think that careful consideration needs to be made and really taken into true consideration on the neighborhood. I agree with Mr. Glancy's previous remarks. Putting a 3-story home next to a single family residence is a bit invasive. So I think the reality is these developments are going to continue to happen, but we need to adjust our planning and zoning to accommodate some sort of consideration to these individuals that have existing homes. It's just the facts of the matter. We have control over how we can see these neighborhoods, and if we slam houses in there, we're just kind of being naive to the controls that are available to us. Put shorter homes on the perimeter and taller homes on the infill. There's lots of options. Again, I'm not totally against development in Boise. I think it's a reality. I just think that we count on our commissioners to protect what we that have been here for decades have purchased already. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Betts. So the last, yeah, great. The last hand that I see is Jennifer Barnett. If there's anybody else that would still like to speak on this item tonight, particularly for any new information to be added to the record, please go ahead and virtually raise your hand. But we'll next hear from Jennifer Barnett. So Jennifer, go ahead when you're ready. You'll have 3 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Barnett. I live 1951 South Ave Street, which is directly across the street from this development on the corner of Abs and Palouse. We are strongly opposed to this LO rezone for density reasons that have been discussed, for the fact that most of West Palouse and all of South Abs along this area do not have sidewalks. We have a child that walks to school in this area along with a lot of others, and I think it's important for the safety of our children walking to school, safe routes to school. And one of the issues here being that when you live as close to Whitney as we do, you do have to walk. There is no busing available to the children in this neighborhood. And that would include, of course, the children that may be in this future development. Our child currently has to kind of walk around, everything parked in the street. Pretty much in the street is the only option on South Abs on your way to school. We are also concerned with the potential brown zone issue that was sort of touched on earlier. We haven't really heard much when it comes to what the developer has planned as far as soil testing. There seems to be a little debate as to whether the site does qualify for a brown zone, and that's of a concern if there's a development going in. We're also, concerned with the fact that the development does not appear, or the zoning does not appear to match anything nearby, as everyone has mentioned. And when the height goes above all the homes nearby, we're really concerned about being directly across the street, that we'll have no privacy in our own backyard. I'm sure a lot of people in the area feel that same way. I think the zoning pushes the limits on traffic, the roads, the utility services, the neighborhood character. So I'd really like to see this rezone denied. That is all.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Next, we'll hear from Nina Schaefer again. Nina, please name and address again and 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Nina Schaefer and I live on 117 South Dot Street. I'm here today again to voice my support for this project as well. My reasoning for supporting this project is similar to the points that I made on the Shoshone and Overland project, the proximity to bus lines, and projected and new bicycle ways that ACHD has put in, being only 3 minutes away from the Vista corridor, which addresses the Blueprint Boise goal of providing access to nearby economic centers. And I also want to bring up something that happened last week at the ACHD meeting, where Commissioner Goldthorpe stated that there are 450 miles of streets in Ada County that do not have sidewalks. And I bring this up because the status of having no sidewalks is not unique to this area, and places that are experiencing unsustainable sprawl face similar issues, such as Amity, where a 7-year-old boy was hit and killed just a couple years ago. The lack of sidewalks in these areas is not permanent, and we do have a commission, especially the representative of this area, that not only knows the lack of sidewalks that we need in our community, but are actively working to add sidewalks in these kinds of neighborhoods, and developments such as this one, which will be bringing more people into the neighborhood, will only make that process faster. So I do support this project, knowing that new developments such as this helps bring in that kind of new infrastructure that helps support traffic safety. And that is all I have on this one. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. Okay, so the last hand I see is Lindsay Newgard. If anybody else would like to speak on this item, please virtually raise your hand, but Lindsay, go ahead and unmute when you're ready, and please start with your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Lindsay Newgard, 5934 North Alder Point Place. I actually have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share my screen. So let's see if this works. Let's go screen. So sorry. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start my PowerPoint here.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so pretty much this is a spot rezone that's not compatible to the existing residential zones, and it's for a higher density development. Okay, so right now it's located within an established neighborhood that is designated. Hang on one second, let me go ahead and move this up. That is designed or designated for compact. A spot rezone to the LO zone is not appropriate, and it would allow for more density than is compatible with existing uses and the surrounding zoning. Okay, so for example, all right, you have these LO zones up here. They are along Overland. Yes, when I believe it was Commissioner Danley was talking about the proximity of the activity centers, it's closest to the one that's 16 units per acre. Okay, so honestly, it's, you know, it's out of place here. The discrepancy in acreage for the rezone. Okay, so the site survey that was submitted with the application calls out slots 21 and 22 in the Eagleson subdivision, and that's located at 2836 Limhigh. So Limhigh parcel, which is located down below and is cut off in the actual the site survey, is not a part of the parcel for townhomes. So, you know, you're right, 19 units per acre. Okay, so it's closest to the, you know, Vista Neighborhood Association density, but it's at the same time closest to the Targhee Activity Center by lay of the land. The comprehensive plan develops or designates high density as 15 to 45 units per acre. Compact is 16 to 15. Boise code. Okay, so housing types. Let's just not mince words here anymore. These are not townhomes. They are apartments. They are 5 or more units. They are 8plexes. I just want to kind of revamp a little bit of what you guys have decided on a previous project. So the application for entitling for, and that's what we're talking about, is entitling a parcel of land with a development agreement, because we all know development agreements can change. This doesn't have a PUD or a cup attached to it. You guys denied it for the library. And Milt was the one who basically motioned for the denial, the recommendation for denial. Okay, so, and this was after the city had already hired Sadafi, and 6 months after we already knew what was coming on there. We didn't need the PUD attached because the city already like literally paid someone $11 million to develop a plan. And that was December 2018. So that happened on May of 2019.
Time.
Thank you, Ms. Newgard. Okay, so that next we'll move, seeing no other hands for this item, we'll next move to rebuttal from the applicant. Ms. Constantikes, you are back up, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Penelope Constantikes, Post Office Box 405, Boise, Idaho 83701. And I appreciate your efforts to say my name correctly. Thank you. So I don't have a lot to say. I just think that I need to emphasize that there's an opportunity cost here in terms of the site size and its location, proximity to activity centers and transit. And the opportunity cost is that if nothing happens on the site, then the cost of that is the loss of density for both transit support and activity center support, walkability and bikeability. To deny this project would be to set a precedent, or to deny the rezone sets a precedent also. And that precedent is that density close to the city, very close to mass transit, very close to activity centers is not a good idea. So there is a precedent that will be set either way. It's as I discussed in my project narrative, this is a decision that the city of Boise needs to make, whether they want to support transit, if they want to support walkability and people using alternative methods of transportation to get to services. There's a pharmacy, a grocery store, restaurants. There's so much available within a half a mile of this site that it's incredible. Either that or the other option is to maintain the static condition of neighborhoods that have the potential to actually make a difference in terms of our traffic generation, vehicle miles traveled, all the things that have been discussed by some of the people that have testified about the project this evening. And finally, I just wanted to mention, this is not a brownfield site. DEQ has given the site a green light. Yes, there were tanks on the site. There were 2 individuals from the Boise Fire Department that witnessed the removal of those tanks. Before we get to the PUD and preliminary plat phase, should we get there, I will reach out to Romeo Gervais and ascertain whether or not there are any records and find out if those individuals are still present. But since DEQ in Idaho is the highest environmental agency and the highest authority in terms of environmental sites, I think that we would be in good stead to take their word for it. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. No more questions at this time. We will close this portion of the public hearing, and the item is now before the commission. Commissioner Gillespie.
Well, given the hour, I will dive into the pool. I move that we recommend denial of CAR 21-12 and instead encourage the city council to consider R2.
Second.
Madam Chairman.
Great. Sorry, that was second was from Commissioner
Finfrock. Yep.
Finfrock. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Gillespie, please start us off with the discussion.
Just a short preamble. So guys, this is a rezone and they're asking for more density than the allowed zone that they have now. So the question is, what is the right number? Where do we stop? And so in that respect, it's like the Trappers Crossing argument where the zone said 45 feet, the developer wanted 80, and the commission came to 63. And the issue here is that we have to decide where's the density stop point. The developer wants 40, they're entitled with the current zoning to 16. I believe that we can use a lot of tools to find out what we think the middle number is, and that we're not constrained by code to do that. So that's just my preamble. Just a couple of points. Height is not the issue here. It's 35 feet in this whole neighborhood. Anybody could build a 35-foot house. Height isn't the issue. This is a straight density and setback question. And so it's really a matter of art. And so for this commissioner, LO for me and 40 units an acre, 40 units total is just a zone too far in this neighborhood for me. And I just don't think an LO zone is compatible with the surrounding zoning and development, which is criteria 3 of our staff report. I do believe that the development agreement is a really, a great good faith effort to get us to a more compatible zone. But I just think the straight road here is to say, let's rezone this as R2 and go from there. And I want to close with a comment on the city's argument that we've got all these substandard lots all around that are really narrow. And so the real density could be much higher in the surrounding neighborhood. I'd just like to point out that those lots are substandard, which means they're non-conforming. And so for me, I'm not comfortable using a non-conforming lots as the basis for a density calculation or comparison for making zone changes. That's just where I'm at. Thanks.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
So I'm in a complete agreement with Commissioner Gillespie. I just don't believe that the requested rezone of LOD preserves the compatibility of the surrounding zoning and development. And it just seems, as most public comment we heard tonight, it just seems out of character with the neighborhood. I don't believe this application meets all the elements required for the rezone, compatibility due to density being the most prevalent. So I could get behind this project and I could support it. I just not as an LOD and not with the density currently as it stands.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
So just, I will be supporting the motion and a couple other things to add. So one of the major differences between this and the previous is the previous application was already zoned. It was already zoned LO and it was on an arterial. This is not. Neither of those is accurate. So when we have an application to rezone a property, it's as if we're sort of suggesting, okay, what we have doesn't work for us. So what's the next thing to support it? Well, the next thing to support is the comp plan. And while, yes, there are elements of the comp plan that do support higher density, and I completely agree with Commissioner Gillespie in that I think that the middle ground, frankly, would be R2. But there's also things in the comprehensive plan that have to do with, for example, protection or preservation of existing neighborhoods, predictable development patterns, and transition. And those are tenets that are also valuable to the city. And specifically when people do move into the neighborhood and they see their surrounding neighborhoods are zoned as it was the R1C, there should be a degree of predictability there. And I tend to agree with the neighborhood association and Mr. Kangas for his testimony. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, any final discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I think I will be supporting the motion. I think the arguments for the motion are kind of make sense to me. I'm comfortable with those arguments. Was a little bit on the fence. I could see the city's side wanting more density, especially with that intersection of activity centers. However, predictable neighborhood pattern, office zoning in this surrounded by, no arterial streets, surrounded by R1 or R zoning. It's hard to kind of think that it is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, even with the development agreement. I think that's a good start, but I'm just not quite there. Maybe that's a comment on our zoning code more than anything. But yeah, I think, and I agree that maybe R2 zoning with that neighborhood center being 15, I think I saw a density with the nearest neighborhood center could be a good compromise in that, and would also encourage city council for that.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to recommend denial for item number 7, CAR 21-12 at 2801 West Police Street, with lots of great notes to go along with that for city council. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Gillespie.
Aye.
Finfrock.
Aye.
Danley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you so much for attending tonight.